Good afternoon and welcome to the Corporation of the Town of Kirkland Lake special meeting of council held June the 6th, 2017. We have the approval of the agenda.
It's moved by Councillor Mino, seconded by Councillor Morgan, that council approves the agenda for its special meeting of June 6, 2017 as presented.
All in favor? Carried, thank you. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest? None declared. Petitions and delegations. Ashley, you're going to speak to zoning application number 21.
Yep.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody here to discuss this application or for this application in particular? No? Okay. All right, so this zoning bylaw amendment application is actually number 21. The property is located along Highway 112, which is depicted in the picture above. The purpose of the rezoning is to take the rural zone that it's currently zoned as and designate it to mineral extraction to allow for a pit and quarry as the permitted use on the property. So just to give you an aerial image on where we're located, I'm going to go up and point, sorry. The brunt of the activity is going to be taking place right here. You can kind of see a little rock crop in there. They're actually planning on blasting into the rock to grab the aggregate. So that's just a site plan depicting exactly where the proposed pit face is supposed to be and just located pretty much on those two southernmost claims. The proposal is to keep the northern claims treed and buffered from surrounding land uses. So just some pictures of the site itself. You see some rock outcrops, and this is taken just from the one entrance they do plan on using in order to access the property. Again, on Highway 112. Okay, so just to bring it back to the site plan and start talking about our provincial policy. In terms of provincial policy, aggregate resources are something that the province really tries to protect and encourage development of. They look at it as a great economic development opportunity, especially in Northern Ontario. We don't have a lot of designated areas for aggregate. They're actually mostly located up on Nettie Lake, but when they do designate them in our official plan, they are protected from sensitive land uses such as housing and cottage development, so that we don't have any problems extracting that aggregate later on. In this instance, we are putting the request is to throw an aggregate pit in this area, which is located approximately, I think it's 850 meters from the closest sensitive use, which is the residence of Mr. Wallace, who has submitted comments for today's meeting. So yeah, like I said, provincial policy definitely encourages aggregate extraction to take place, but they are concerned about the sensitive land uses that are in the area. Our official plan also supports aggregate extraction in the rural area, and there is the guideline that they're subject to the MOE guidelines. So I'm not going to read these out to you. All I can say is that a aggregate pit is considered a Class 3 industrial use as part of these guidelines, and therefore have to be located 1 kilometer away from any type of sensitive land uses. As I mentioned before, we're about 850 meters, I believe, from the house, 650 meters from the actual property lines. So in that instance, we're actually within that 1 kilometer. And the way that they sort of, I'll try and do the aerial so you can see it again. The way they do the measurements, and this is important because, like I said, the extraction is going to be taking place here. The intent of the application is not to rezone all all 5 areas. It's only to rezone here. So your distance will be measured from the furthest point of that zone to the property of the most sensitive land use, which is the zone. So that distance is 650 meters. Yeah, 650 meters. So the MOE guidelines tell us that we have a potential influence area of 1,000 meters. They're within that. So in order to reduce that, they have to go to get technical reports done to analyze whether there's going to be any issues with odor, dust, groundwater, mitigation from noise. So there's a few things that they need to take care of. From a zoning perspective, there's nothing there that really prohibits him from moving forward. I am recommending that I should mention that the Planning Advisory Committee did meet as well. And we all came to the same consensus that we shouldn't likely be doing anything until those studies are completed. And I have talked to the applicant about it and have provided them with the guidelines that the MNR provides for areas up north with the Aggregate Act, so that he knows what he requires to provide us with in terms of technical studies and site plan. He's supposed to have those on my desk by June 15th, so we can likely bring a bylaw for consideration at the next meeting. So at this point, I am recommending we postpone until the next meeting, until we know what that technical report shows as the actual influence area. I'm sure you have questions.
Councillor Kiley.
Yeah, Ashley, even if he does get satisfactory reports, does the landowner, the adjacent landowner, still have the right to go to the OMB?
Yes, of course. So the landowner has raised concerns with water, noise, traffic, pollution, and property value, all legitimate concerns, and 2 out of the 3 will be considered as part of the technical report. And he can definitely appeal to the OMB. So let's say the report comes back and says the actual influence area is 300 meters and they're actually 650. So there's not necessarily a reason I can recommend denial of it, because it does meet all of our policy at that point. If let's say council does approve that bylaw and Mr. Wallace is not satisfied, he has every right to appeal that decision to the Ontario Municipal Board.
We would have to defend ourselves.
Yes,
And pay the costs.
yes.
Why would we, should we consider postponing? Like if it was me, I wouldn't want a quarry 650 meters away from my house.
Yep, so that's the other option, is we deny the application, and then if the applicant wants to push it to the Ontario Municipal Board, they're more than welcome to, and then we have to fight the other way.
I just hate to put them through the expense of getting
Yeah,
all
all
these
the
other
studies
reports
done.
to find out that we weren't going to approve it
Yeah,
anyway.
that's fair, definitely, for sure.
Councillor Roman.
I'm just curious, I didn't get a chance to drive out there. What's the distance between the property in concern and the existing quarry or gravel operation that's out there now?
Quite a,
It's a little bit further, it's past 1 kilometer, so it's 1.2, I think I measured. Just give me a second here. So the closest lot line, yeah,
It's on the same side, eh?
different side to
Well,
the
it's the
property.
same side as Mr. Wallace's property. Yeah.
It's 1.4 kilometers.
1.4,
Yeah.
okay. And how did that one come about?
Because it was outside of that 1 kilometer mark.
What wasn't required?
So
then?
it didn't require to go through any technical studies. It was outside the potential influence area with the MOE guidelines.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor.
Just a quick question. The water should go south from there,
Groundwater works differently than surface water.
right? Okay.
So the surface water would drain south. The groundwater could act like a lake and actually just sit there. So if the groundwater, there's no clue to say what's underneath the ground, where the aggregate is versus where Mr. Wallace's
Yeah.
well is. So unless you do studies of groundwater,
We don't know.
we don't know. I mean, in that instance, there's the mine that's right to the north of it too. That's probably the same distance as where this aggregate pit will be. So, yeah, it's hard to say whether or not the aggregate would have an effect on it. I can't make that call.
No, I think, Councillor Mino.
The people who want to start this pit, they're a business,
Yes.
and where is their business going to be held? Or where are they going to conduct business?
I believe that their office is in New Liskeard. They're proposing to have the pit on site and process on site at this location. But yeah, the majority of the office would be in New Liskeard.
So mineral aggregate business, all they do is they come in, they remove
Yeah.
whatever they need,
In most instances, yes.
and then what happens after the life of that aggregate?
Yeah, so this application, this land use is subject to site plan control because it's an industrial use. So we would have a site plan control agreement that would have to be registered on title with the owners of the property, and it would detail it's like 3 pages of requirements that the M&R needs to see on a site plan. The Planning Advisory Committee also discussed whether or not we take money to form some sort of closure plan with them,
Right.
similar to a mine or other aggregate pits that are down south,
So they
that fall underneath the Aggregate Act.
So they are obliged to have a closure plan.
They are obliged to have a closure plan. They are not obliged to pay us money. So we could ask for money, and if that's our requirement, that we need to have money put down in order for them to operate, then that'll be up to them to decide whether they proceed or. But yeah, those are all things that can be stipulated in the site plan control agreement, which would be looked at after the zoning amendment's approved, if it's approved.
And just hypothetically, if this company decides to go ahead without this kind of process, what's the stick that we have, or what's the, you know, if they're doing something against the law, who pursues that?
So you're saying if they started taking aggregate out of here without our permission tonight, or
Yeah.
with, they would have, well, we wouldn't have to enforce it through bylaw enforcement. Probably get the M&R involved as well, and see if they can do anything. We're in a sticky situation up north because the Aggregate Act doesn't actually come into effect north of North Bay. I think they're in the process of trying to get it to affect the rest of the north,
Right.
but after North Bay South, M&R is very heavily involved in aggregate operations. Anything north of that, it's up to the municipality to a certain extent to make sure that all of these due diligence items are covered. It's extremely challenging to make sure you're crossing all of the right information off, but a lot of it will end up stemming from that's not a permitted land use, so we have to use our bylaw to enforce it.
So our recourse is not very strong.
Well, it's as strong as, yeah, it's probably not the strongest.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Counselor Barker.
Ashley, because of the drinking water situation, the well, would the Ministry of Environment be also involved with this?
Not from what I can see. The MNR has given me like I asked for what they do or what they recommend in terms of requirements. They gave me a full list of 3 pages of items that need to be identified on that site plan. And drinking water was not something that I found came up as part of the discussion. I can certainly ask the MNR and bring it back to council or MOECC and see if they have any comment.
My concern, I guess, with this would be the impact of the drinking water if things are kosher from the research, but their drinking water ends up negatively affected. Would we as council be personally liable for their drinking water if it's coming from a well?
I'd have to look into it in a little bit further detail because it wouldn't fall under that same we're providing safe drinking water act because it's private well. But I'm like, there's things that could be added to the site plan control agreement that if there was hypothetically something that went wrong and he wasn't able to drink from the well, you could put conditions such as they'll be responsible for replacing or hooking them up to water and sewer, since we do have a sewer line that's going to be proposed to go through there soon. So.
Counselor Morgan.
Yeah, I just wanted to help clarify a couple of things that were said. First of all, because I sit on the Planning Advisory Committee, so we've obviously had a fair amount of time to discuss this. And the closure plan or the site plan control agreement that we talked about, that's mandatory. That's going to happen, and we can put as much teeth or as many conditions on that as we want. The other thing that the Planning Advisory Committee would like to see, and Ashley's looking into it, is whether it's appropriate and whether it can be done, is to put a financial assurance on the site plan control agreement like they do in the Mining Act. So we're a little bit uncertain about that at this point in time, but we would like to to look at that on a go-forward basis for any of these types of projects, because it does give a little more teeth to the eventual remediation of the site. As far as the drinking water goes, and that certainly came up in our discussion as well, but the feeling was that if the drinking water was likely to be affected, it would probably be more affected by the fact that there's a 7,000-foot deep mine within the same area of influence as what this quarry is. So the likelihood of somehow, you know, draining their well seems to be a bit remote. So that's the way the Planning Advisory Committee looked at it. But again, I think this is one of the things, Ashley, that the technical reports will look at. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe the technical report, so I'm not sure if it deals with the groundwater. It was mostly about dust, noise, odor, and visual barriers and making sure there's enough buffering happening for those things to be mitigated. I don't know if it touched on groundwater.
Well, anyways, I guess to make a long story short, is the advisory committee, we talked at length about the groundwater issue, and it was felt that if there was going to be some impact, it would more than likely happen from the mine, which is, a massive hole in the ground if you look at it from a cavern perspective and pulling in groundwater versus this, which is primarily above ground. It's actually, they're removing essentially a mound or a hill or an outcrop, which is almost entirely above the groundwater level. So that's the way we were looking at it.
Thank you.
And sorry, just to, I guess, go back to what Todd was saying, the intent, we could place certain conditions in the zoning bylaw to allow him not to go underground so that you stay above grade. And then the second part I was going to mention was that I did determine that they aren't planning on blasting the whole rock. There's still going to be a wall left over. So there should be some, again, mitigative, that's sort of a mitigative measure in itself to protect it from noise, because you're going to have that big wall of a hill, and most of the sound's going to be treated towards the south versus the north. But that's stuff that would come up through those technical studies.
I believe the reason, like the pit that's in operation now is 1.3 kilometers or something,
1.4, yeah.
1.4 kilometers. And nobody had to come to us to get any. And I believe the reason that the ministry or the government has the 1,000 meter buffer is because that's what it should be. I don't know if we should be looking for reasons to allow somebody to be 650 meters away to operate a quarry that the town certainly is going to benefit from. And one of our tax-paying residents who bought that home, rural, the neighbor was rural, probably wouldn't even think of a quarry because it's within the distance. And now we're trying to make it so that he can do it within 650 meters. I think the fact that he's not 1,000 meters should be a very important part of our decision. I mean, we can all go out and get studies done. The proponent can go out and get a study, the opponent can go out and get a study done. They'll probably come out with different reasons. But the thing that we do know that is consistent, and that is it does not meet the distance in order to have a quarry. And to me, that should be the end of it. If there was 80 or 100 jobs and the neighbor was willing to work with us, then perhaps. But to upset a neighbor, to put something in that doesn't conform with what the rules are, to me is not a real good direction. I believe we should squash it here, but that's my opinion. Councillor Kiley.
Mayor Tony mentioned jobs. Do we know what employment this is going to create? I can't see it being,
I haven't asked that question. So I couldn't answer
I-
it.
I could answer that by what I think. I think they're going to roll in from out of town with all their equipment, all their men. They're going to make a hell of a lot of noise for a long time, and then they'll stop it when they have it. And then when they need more rock, they'll roll back into town with all their equipment and all their men, and they'll make a hell of a lot more noise until they finish it off, and then they'll leave. I don't see any benefit to the community. None at all.
I have to agree. I think there's more risk than reward for the town of Kirkland Lake, and we owe it to Mr. Wallace to put a stop to it now before it goes further. That's my opinion.
Sorry, I just,
Councillor Shamiard.
Tony, I don't think we should speculate. We should check what's going on. We don't know.
Well, we do know one thing. We know that the quarry has to be 1,000 meters from the home.
But you say,
and
well, this is
It's
what's
gonna
going
be
on.
650.
We don't know what's going on. Ashley said she didn't ask, so that's it.
Oh, well, I was only giving Councillor Kiley my thought
Yeah,
on what I think's gonna
But
happen.
you don't know neither.
But I'm not making my decision on that. I'm making my decision
okay.
on the fact that it doesn't meet the
Yeah.
the
There might
specifications.
be 400 jobs there. We don't know.
Well, I don't think so, but.
Well, we don't know.
I just want to clarify that 1,000 meters, just so that you really understand the guideline. So the 1,000 meters is a potential influence area. In that document, it also stipulates that no matter what, if you're within 1,000 kilometers, they have to do technical studies to determine what that actual influence area is. So that would, the point of the technical studies to figure out what that actual influence area is. At no point can you be within 300 meters. So 300 meters is really you can't be closer than that, no matter what study shows. Like if the study shows 100 meters, it doesn't matter, you have to be 300 meters away. The 1,000 is just there to get the studies in place to make sure that the neighboring properties are protected. So the studies is
Yeah,
there
but-
to give you what that actual number
But
is.
it's
I just
also-
wanted to clarify
Yeah,
that.
I understand that, but
Yeah.
it's also very important in us having no
Yeah.
jurisdiction over it. So if it's important for that, it should be important as just as important on the other side. Any other discussion or? So what would be the intent now?
So my recommendation, because at this point, there's a lot of provincial policy and our official plan does support aggregate extractions to take place. I did recommend that we proceed with having them conduct a study to determine what that actual influence area is. So there is no bylaw being presented to council tonight because I was assuming that we would proceed with letting the applicants know that we'd get them to do the studies and come back at a later date to pass that bylaw. But if you guys are wanting to,
Well, that's just
Denied
my
at this
opinion, but
point,
I
that's
think
fine.
Councillor Cotty brought up a good point in saying, why should we put the potential purchaser of this property through all that if we're not going to approve it?
yeah,
I just think we're going on strange, on, just sort of, we're going over the side a bit, and, you know, I could see us doing that at times, but I just don't see the benefit to the community. I see no benefit to anybody in this community. And I see a very bad situation with the resident that has purchased a property, rural, and the neighbor was rural. I just don't see any advantage in doing it. Councillor Mino.
Ashley, couple things. The company in question here, have they spoken with this resident? Do you know that?
no.
So they're coming directly to us. They're not doing a due diligence and,
No, they have not spoken
So-
to the owner at all. at
so
this
they know
point.
they're not within 1,000 meters.
Yeah, I've been communicating with them.
Yeah.
And they've been under the impression that they have it ready to go to do the technical studies if that's the direction we got from council, so.
I'm just thinking, in these circumstances, would the company approach the only one residence there to,
If, this is where if you were in southern Ontario, the
Yeah.
answer would be yes.
yes.
Because they would have to go through an environmental
Right.
assessment with the ministry, but
The other thing is, when you, just to educate me here, the RA,
yes.
what's the specific definition, or what's the
What are the
contents
permitted
of an RA?
uses in there?
Like, are we
Sorry.
are we disrupting the RA? We're gonna go to ME, or that's what's the proposal?
The proposal is to go to ME.
Yeah, but what's RA constitute in
I'm
terms
going
of
to pull it up.
trees, water?
Single detached dwellings, and I'm going to
Uh-huh.
pull it up so I don't quote something that I'm not supposed to. So your permitted uses, yeah, agricultural, airports, forestry logging, hunt camps, hobby farms.
Pits and quarries.
Well, existing only, yeah. So we only need to amend so that they reflect existing ones. Anything that you do from now on, or from when that bylaw was passed onwards,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you would, you have to apply because it's the only way of notifying the public, right? Because if they didn't have to apply for a zoning amendment, there's no reason why the public would have to get notified.
And in our master plan, we have not dealt with that zone or that area. We just dealt with Highway 66, have we?
Sorry?
In our official plan.
Our official plan, our official plan does have policies within the rural area that allow for mineral aggregate extraction. So the official plan doesn't need to be altered, it's just a
So
zoning
it's
bylaw.
just this, well, we can alter official plans now anyways.
We can, yes,
have the
but
right
we
to
don't
do that.
have to, because our policy is consistent with it. The only thing is that it references that MOE guideline, giving that setback, that potential influence area. That's.
Okay.
Mhm.
My suggestion to council is that you vote first on whether or not you want to proceed. And then if there is a, if you do get a yes vote, then we would go ahead and follow the recommendations or vote on the recommendations of the town planner to go ahead and do the study, if that's all right with you.
So we'll call a vote.
Cool. Let me-
So Joanne, there's no way to wait to get more information? Like, it seems. Well, I would like to have more information, really. But I'd like to know what's going on there.
I'd like to have the satisfaction that Mr. Wallace has had a discussion with this company to arrive at a mutual win-win situation, and then maybe we can endorse that outcome, but if you're asking us to can it tonight, then this cannot happen. So I'm looking at some kind of mutual, because Mr. Wallace has good, strong points, I respect that, and the company is bound by certain laws, but if Mr. Wallace is willing to, you know, scratch his back and vice versa, maybe this could be easily resolved in the future.
Because this is maybe for a project in town, we don't know. It might be a 2-month thing, we don't know. I thought you guys don't know much.
No, and like the Planning Advisory Committee is apolitical. I mean, we're simply, you know, a project or a development comes to the Planning Advisory Committee, and we're looking at it strictly from a regulatory perspective. There's no rubber stamp here. So whether, you know, council wants to deep six this or continue on with it is immaterial to the Planning Advisory Committee. But speaking as a counselor, I agree, Norm. I mean, if you know, if the people can come to some arrangement, I think that's a much better solution, but I'm not a cheerleader for it. I'm not opposed to it.
Councillor Kiley.
I agree, the good neighbor policy is the way it should have went to begin with, and the developer of the property had that opportunity and didn't act on it, so I'm in favor of squashing it before we spend a bunch of money for
Yeah.
nothing.
I just want to bring in a different aspect of it, that the proponent does continue to do their required research and is doing some of that currently. And so there may be some other legal implications that we need to determine exactly what they are in conversation with that proponent. We'd bring that back to your attention, obviously. Okay, but the proponent is not existing in a vacuum. They, of course, do proceed a little bit as well. I just need to put that on the table for you to understand.
So I heard you, but I didn't understand what you said.
I'm trying to find my way between a rock and a hard spot here, so it's slippery. The proponent does continue to explore their options on that property and how feasible that property is. The discussion that we have is about what they want to do, but ownership is a slightly different issue, and so that there's a little bit of cross-pollination here that we will need to sort out, and I can't really go into more depth than that, but obviously we'd bring it back to your attention as we proceed. They're two different issues, ownership versus use of. So I'm just trying to be almost clear on this.
Well, if I guess, to clarify, if we squash this tonight and the proponent still has the opportunity coming back to council within at a later date,
that would help.
Mind you, if he's gonna have to do a bunch of studies on the property that he doesn't own, can't get on.
Well, he does have the access to that property. Again, purchasing the land but not necessarily using for that purpose is not the same. So he is quite entitled to go and continue to explore what he can do there. And as we proceed, that's something we need to bring back to your attention as well, and we will.
But tonight is the quarry, right?
That's right,
Yeah.
that's
It's the
right,
quarry and the fact that it's,
that's right.
it's not far
But we
enough.
need to make you understand, be sympathetic to the fact that the proponent is, you know.
but
doing
that's,
their-
could we deal that as another issue?
That's
Yes.
right,
So today, we're just
Yes.
dealing with the quarry. Do we-
that's right. Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, no, okay, so let's,
They didn't spike the
that's good,
cost.
yeah, 'cause you-
So I have a resolution whether or not to proceed, and just a reminder that you can either accept this, you can turn it down, or you can defer it. So accept, deny, or defer. So it's moved by Councillor Roman, seconded by Councillor Mino, that the town planner proceed with the next steps for the rezoning and application 21.
all in favor?
Just a point of order, I think our clerk just said we could defer it.
Yeah,
Yes.
but, yeah,
So defeating it would defer it?
No, so you have three options. You
Okay,
either
well,
vote for it, against it, or you vote to
Okay.
defer it. Okay. Okay, in favor? One, okay. So against?
against? Against
Two?
approving it?
Yes. Like quashing this now, defeating it. Do you want it defeated or deferred? If you defeat it, so that's what you're voting for right now, to defeat the motion.
And not defer it.
That's right. So the next option is to defer until more information comes in. Yes, sir, you have to vote.
I want to squash it, because it's not going to be within, it's too close. That's my vote.
Then it's one in favor, three against, and three to defer. And a tie vote is a no vote. So it's defeated.
Thank you.
Pardon me? One's in favor, yeah.
Thank you, Ashley.
Okay, it's moved by Councillor Mino and seconded by Councillor Morgan. The council adjourned the special meeting of June 6, 2017 to a regular meeting.
All in favor? Meeting adjourned.
Okay, 5:15. So it's moved by Councillor Morgan, seconded by Councillor Mino. The council approves its agenda for the regular meeting of June 6, 2017 as presented.
All in favor? Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest? None declared. Graham Gamble, so you're going to come up and talk on Rock Walk?
The agenda, can I do the agenda first?
Oh, I thought you already did it.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
It's good to be back in Kirkland Lake, where I was born 67 years ago today. I spent my first 23 years here in Kirkland, and I spent about the last 35 years down at Haleberry. That one? Okay. Okay, so I just want to give you a little bit knowledge about my background so that you'll know where I'm coming from when I'm talking about the geoparks. I went through Haleberry School of Mines, got a diploma in mining technology. Went down to University of Guelph, got a degree in agriculture. Put the two of them together, and I've been doing a career in the mining environmental end and also in agriculture. So these two career areas have come together in this global geopark, which focuses on both the mining industry and on the agriculture industry in this area. What we have here is an opportunity that has only come up in the last few years. The UNESCO program started this initiative around the millennium. And as I said, most of you folks copies of the information package or know a little bit about the background. The main thing to understand is that there is very few people that know about this program in Canada. There's only 2 geoparks in Canada. One is in New Brunswick, the other one is over in Tumbler Ridge in northern BC. And they don't really have a big budget for promoting it, so it's up to individuals to find out about it and then see if it works for their area. Now, Rock Walk Park, which I am part of, we found out about this around 2010, and we said, gee, you know, it kind of sounds like something that might work in the Temiskaming district, but let's just wait a while and see if we can gather some information. So we've been looking at this for some time, and in 2014, I went over to an international conference in St. John, New Brunswick, and there was about 475 people there, only 40 from Canada, the vast majority from either from Asia or they're from Europe. And they were very excited about this opportunity to be in Canada, to see what Canada has to offer for geopark systems as opposed to what they have in their communities. The first thing that I found out when talking to the folks is that, yes, most of them live in what we would consider to be a tropical paradise over in Malaysia and Japan and those other areas and some fantastic areas in Europe. But when they look out their back door, it's the same as us looking out the back door here or in Temiskaming shores. We look out and say, yeah, it's the same as we've seen for the last number of years. Nothing's really changed here. And when you talk to those folks, they say, yes, that's what we think of down in our area, but we want you guys from North America to come down and see it because you've never seen the tropics and you've never seen all these different opportunities. And that's where we go in the winter vacations. We usually head south. What the opportunity here is to bring in people from around the world to see a geopark here in Ontario, on the Ontario-Quebec border. There's only one place like it, and that's right here. So the opportunity here is to take a look at international tourism. We're not just considering bringing people in from North Bay or from Timmins. We're looking at people from farther beyond, even beyond Toronto. We are looking at an international opportunity. Which one am I going to shoot on here? Is there an error on this?
No, it's a mouse. It's just a mouse.
Oh, on the mouse?
On the laptop?
You know how to run this? Oh, it has to be down there? Okay. Look, okay. So, question is, why should we bother with tourism? I also, since I retired a couple of years ago, I've been working with the Northern Ontario Tourist Outfitters, and I'm currently on an organization called Tourism Excellence North. And we are trying to reactivate tourism in Northern Ontario, and it just kind of is a coincidence that it kind of goes along with this geopark program. One of the things that I found out about tourism in Temiskaming here is that we are the lowest of the low when you come and look at tourism in Northern Ontario. And across most countries, the gross national product
is basically about 9% of a country's wealth is based on tourism. In Canada, it's somewhere around 4%. But here in the Temiskaming district, we're down somewhere around 1%, despite the fact that the northeastern section of Northern Ontario, which includes North Bay Sudbury, is the most prominent tourism area in Northern Ontario. But the tourism seems to follow Highway 17. It does not go up Highway number 11. And so Tourism Excellence North is looking at how to regenerate new opportunities up in this area. And they're saying the things that you and I, you folks here who have a bit of gray hair, basically you've been doing fishing and hunting and snowmobiling in the past. That's what we've always been excited about. But apparently the millennials that are coming on are not so excited about those things. So how are we going to adjust our tourism opportunities to reflect the needs of the people that are coming on? And this is what Tourism Excellence North is looking at. So the Geopark is an opportunity to look at that. Okay. The UNESCO brand. Right now, UNESCO is the largest tourism operator in the world. You don't think of United Nations as being a tourist operator, but the UNESCO portion is, because they have all these World Heritage sites, they have these biosphere sites, and since the millennium, we've had a number of global geoparks. 120 of them, up until last year, we've had another 7 added in May of this year. So 127 through about 35 countries around the world. So when you look at the UNESCO brand, it is something that is like having a Walmart in your town. Now, you guys don't have a Walmart in your town. You folks come down to Temiskaming Shores to see Walmart. The folks from Quebec come across over to see Walmart. It's important to a local economy to have a Walmart. There are other, well, there's a disagreement.
I don't agree with that, but go ahead.
Okay, so there is, the Geopark brand is desired. There's folks in Sudbury that are trying to develop this. There's folks in the Niagara Escarpment that are trying to develop this as well. There's a total of 11 aspiring geoparks across Canada at this time. So they're all in various phases of getting the programs up and going. Right now, we have gathered just about all the data that we can, and when I say we, I'm referring to, did that wrong? Here, I'll let you handle that. When I say we, I'm referring to the Fossilarium and Notre Dame du Nord and Rock Walk. We've been working together on this project for the last couple of years. We are collecting the technical data. That is all we do, is get the technical data together. When it comes to actually getting this program up and running, we have to go back to the municipalities. UNESCO says that you have to have the grassroots on board. Well, Rock Walk's only got 15 people. Fossilarium's got a couple of dozen. That doesn't represent the grassroots. The municipalities are what represents the grassroots in Canada. So that is why we're coming back to this Kirkland Lake Council. We're also looking at all the other councils through the Ontario side of Temiskaming, and Fossilarium is looking at the council and talking to them on the Quebec side. We need, in order to get this thing up and running, is a group of a board of founding directors, founding members, representing various councils through the area. We also need to have representation from the First Nations. So at very minimum, we need one of the councils from Ontario, one of the councils from Quebec, and one First Nations. So we have 20-odd councils in Ontario, 20-odd councils in Quebec, and the First Nations beside. Now, the reason that we are looking at both sides of the border here is that UNESCO says that this program has to look at something that does not have political boundaries. It has to represent the old traditional natural boundaries. And in our case here, we have the Temiskaming Rift Valley that goes through from the Mattawa area, actually all the way up through to Kapuskasing, but we're cutting it off at the height of land at just north of Kirkland here. It will be effectively, it will be an area that is known as the basin of the former glacial Lake Barlow. that was in this area. North of the watershed, there was another glacial lake that was up in that area. So we look at the Rift Valley sides, the east and the west. Those are fault lines, very clear on the geological maps. We look at the Arctic watershed, very clear line. Down in the south corner, when we're heading down to North Bay, and you go down to Tilden Lake there, and just before you go up that big hill where you're trying to pass all the transports, right at the bottom of that hill, there is a quartzite dike that runs across from there over to just north of Mattawa. And that is the dividing line between the Temiskaming Rift Valley and the Mattawa River, Lake Nipissing Rift Valley on the other side. So we have very definite geological boundaries, which is exactly what UNESCO wants. And so we can't really cut it down. We could say, okay, we just want to have the South Temiskaming end. Can't do that. It has to be the whole thing or nothing, because it's all in one geological feature, and it goes on both sides of the border. So Canada, being part of UNESCO, has declared that this is something that Canada is interested in. They've sent out to the provinces and said, we want you guys to have people, bureaucrats working on it. We have one fellow from Ontario here. He's down at Peterborough, Ministry of Natural Resources down there, and he does all the work with the province. And then it's up to us to find the local people in the north. The rules for the park are quite simple. Nothing changes. There is no change in law or any regulations. Anything that you guys have put in place stands. Anything the province puts in stands. Anything the feds puts in will stand. All it is basically planting a big flag in the middle of the site and saying, we've got something special here for the tourists. And we have the outlines, and that we can work together. And that's the important part, is that we have to work together with the whole area. It's a bit of a conflict for each municipality, because traditionally, you've been looking after using your taxpayer money to look after your taxpayers. And we do it the same in all of our municipalities. But this is one opportunity where we probably don't have to put too much tax dollars into it, but we get a big benefit because we do have that opportunity for this brand to come in. We have time limits on doing this, and this is the important part to recognize, is that we have already been declared an aspiring geopark. We have put in a proposal for these geological outlines, and the head of the Commission for the Geoparks in Canada said, yes, that sounds good, go ahead and try to develop it. As of this month, we have actually 5 years left in order to do it, and it is a time frame that could be reduced to 3 years. We might be able to get it done by then, but we might have to have that extra 5 years. Reason being is that UNESCO only accepts 2 new geoparks from any given country on any given year. So I was mentioning that we have 11 of them across Canada. If the other boys all getting excited and going ahead, it could be that they might get in and use up the geopark status for the coming couple of years, and we might not be able to get ours in until 2022. So we do have that time frame that we have to consider. So let's go to the next one here. What I have to do, and what as part of Rock Walk and the Fossilarium, is that we have to put together a promotional document of about 50 pages. Half of those pages will be pictures, and the other half will be a description of all the different things that we have that are geologically oriented, landscape oriented. We can talk a little bit about the biological things, such as the Hillerton Marsh and the cultural activities that go on, but we have to focus on that geology. But the main point is that this is the requirement of UNESCO to get things started. Once you're in, then we can use all these other cultural things that we already have going in order to supplement, to back up the rest of the program. So we'll be putting together this a paper to have it ready for November, but on the first page inside, that has to show who are the founding members. And right now, we've got Temiskaming Shores, the economic development people are looking at it there. There are people over on the Quebec side that are looking at it to see what community would fit best to be on that founding board. As I said, we need a minimum of 3. I would like to see 10 or 12, so don't be shy, you know, just maybe to make sure it jumps on, because you are a big outfit, a big town up in the north here, representing the north end. It would be a very good idea to have Kirkland on as well, but it could be Lauder Lake too. So there is room for a number to get involved. Next shot. You see where I am here. In the scheduling, there are certain costs that will be involved. And the South Temiskaming Business Development has said that this here document that we're putting together for October, November, we can likely have that cost of about $5,000 run through the Business Development Office down there. Now, when it comes to the next step, is that if it is accepted by the national body, then the national body will send 2 people here to Temiskaming to evaluate what we have to show. The catch is we have to pay for all of their out-of-pocket costs, the flight, their hotels, food, travel around, that type of thing, but not any payment for day, per diem type of thing. So they will then take a look at it, see if what we said in the document matches what they see on the ground. If they're happy, they say, yes, you can become a Canadian geopark. And then you can go to the international level. So in that, the next step then would be in September 2018, where we need to have representation go over to Italy to the international conference, same as I went to St. John, New Brunswick. So there would be a certain amount of costs involved there. At that point, we've put in another report to the international body, which is just going to be an upgrade of the one that I'm working on this year. And then that will be evaluated by the international body. They will send 2 people for the following year, 2019. Again, we have to pick up the cost. And then they decide that if this is a good fit for the geopark program. So there are costs involved, but when you tie the whole thing together, you're looking at probably $50,000, $60,000, split 3 ways: Ontario side, Quebec side, and the First Nation side. So say if it was $60,000, then Ontario would be about 20. Not all of that's going to come out of anybody's taxpayers. A lot of that, most of it, I would expect comes out of FinNor, or Northern Heritage, or what is on the Quebec side. So I don't think that there's a lot of dollars, but what it does require is that somebody from Kirkland Lake, if you decide to be a founding member, somebody from this community here is going to have to represent Kirkland Lake. It could be one of your hired people, it could be one of you fellows sitting down here, or it could be somebody from within the community who has a particular interest in this type of thing. The founding members will decide the direction that the geopark will take. And so I could be a technical assistant to help you, same with the fossilarium, they can supply technical detail, but it is you folks that would be deciding on who's on the founding members. So it's a lot more fun to be on the founding member board than just watching the other guys do the work. It'll be a lot the same as what is happening with the airport down at Earlton. There is a board of directors that are running it, and you have somebody assigned to do most of the work. Next shot. Okay. I think I've already talked about that. Let's go for another one. Okay. Yes. One of the things that you would have to look at as a founding member is who is actually going to run the operation 5 years down the road. What they have done in St. John, New Brunswick is they actually hired a CEO. The important part about this is that would be the person that supports tourism throughout all of this area. Right now, I don't believe you have anybody who has a specific mandate of promoting tourism full-time for Kirkland Lake. I understand that really it's only Sudbury, Sioux, and Thunder Bay that do that. And
We do have an economic development officer that
Yes.
Is employed by
yes,
the
we all-
town.
a lot of them have economic developments, but when talking to the international promoters through Northern Ontario Tourism, they say what we're really looking for is some organization that has a focus on tourism and only tourism, And that is what they find out in those three major countries, major cities. Those cities are the ones that they bring in international tourists to from Britain, from Germany, and elsewhere. On the Quebec side, they only bring in people from France. They've already made a decision that Quebec will focus on France and Ontario will focus on the other European countries. But because we're sitting on the border here and we are bilingual for the most part, we can get all of those countries coming in to this area. Now, keep in mind that what we're looking at is long-term, 5-10 years down the road, but it has to start somewhere, but we're looking at international tourism in the future. Okay, the various parks, various components to the geopark, and there's places for all organizations to be involved. But it all starts with the founding members making the decision as to how they want it to be set up. So I am looking for municipalities who are willing to be one of the founding members. Is there another one on there? I think we're getting very close to the end. The last one. Okay. A lot of the data that we need to make decisions has already been created by the other geoparks in the Canadian system. The one that I particularly like is the information from New Brunswick. It is set up similar to this, where there is a rich heritage of municipal governments operating together. The other one up in Tumbler Ridge, BC, is basically one town and trying to make a go of it in the middle of the wilderness. So I kind of focus over to the constitution that comes out of New Brunswick, which will be made available to everybody who is interested in working on this. So what I'm asking of this council today is that they accept this little report that I've given you, and I would like that be a motion that your economic development people take a look at this in order to do a due diligence, basically to find out that I'm not bullshitting you. That is the bottom line, that you've got to be confident with the information packages, get whatever else that you need, and then you guys can make a decision if you want to be part of the founding members. Questions?
I guess the question I have, just so I can sort of get this in my head, is at the beginning, we're looking to fly a delegation from where to where?
That would be in the fall of 2018. A minimum of 3 people, 1 Quebec, 1 from Ontario, 1 First Nation. From here to probably Turin, Italy. The location is in the Alps, the
Okay.
Italian Alps.
And then we also have to pay for a delegation to come to our
Correct.
park. So,
So those things, seeing as how the federal government is supporting this geopark concept, I would feel fairly confident that FedNor should put a few bucks into this. I haven't looked at it. I've just let them know that this is going, but the founding members would be the ones that would have to nail that down.
I see.
It could be that some of our mining community would also like to support, because a geopark is designed to support the mining industry. There's a lot of people out there that are against mining, and Geopark's program is to make it clear as to where the importance of mining is within our society. And that is not being handled by anybody to any great extent right now. And this is an opportunity for education to whoever we can involve in this tourism opportunity.
okay. Well, Graham, thank you for a very interesting presentation. Certainly learned something today. Going forward, we don't have any resolution. This is just information only.
That's up to you. Did you want a motion to?
I think we should, you know, if the motion is to perhaps have our economic development officer look into this or work with, that's about as far as we want to go.
That's all as far as we can go at this time.
Then perhaps we could entertain a resolution. Is that fine with council, or would you rather? I mean, that, you know, part of the role of our economic development is tourism. I mean, it's our official plan, it's in tourism as well.
And I would like to meet with your economic
But
development.
putting up
advisor.
dollars is like putting up a wall, sort of. I don't know if we're ready to commit any dollars.
Yeah,
I don't know if we want to fly people back and forth from Europe to the area and then from the area to Europe. I think if somebody wants, you know,
yeah,
they can pay their own flight.
yeah. So really what it is to have an economic
Yep.
development officer look at the data that Fossilarium and Rock has collected and to see how it fits with the goals of this organization.
Yep, and while I'm talking, I'm sort of looking down at Wilf, and I'm looking for his head to shake up and down, yeah. Sideways, you know. But, I mean, for sure, I mean, we're open to, we want to attract tourists.
Yeah.
Definitely, I mean,
Okay. Very good, thank you.
you know, oh, Councillor Mino, sorry.
You mentioned that tourism is 1% of the GNP.
I'm sorry, I'm a little.
You mentioned that tourism is 1% of the GNP in Temiskaming, right?
It's down in that neighborhood. It is.
And it's the lowest of the lowest.
It's very hard to get numbers because they focused on northeast corridor, a section by itself. But we know that most of that tourism is happening effectively in Sudbury District. And when you talk to the people, after they give their sessions, they say, well, Temiskaming is very low. It is the lowest of northern Ontario.
So if that's statistically sort of proved, why is not the feds or the province financing this project all the way through, given our low?
We have not went to them. Rock and Fossilarium had probably put in about $5,000 worth of what just in cost. And probably one person's time, when you combine everybody who's been working on it, is about 1 year value of the, say, a consultant's time has been putting this together. But that's all been volunteer on both sides. So it's not to the point where we want to go to ask for money at this time. We want the founding members to be the ones that make any economic decisions, not us technical guys who are trying to promote something. We're just running up a flag here and looking for municipalities that are interested in being a founding member, and then it's up to the municipalities to assign somebody in order to make decisions.
When you talked about the height of land, the border of this geopark, the height of land is north of Kirkland Lake, or south of Kirkland Lake.
No, it's north of Kirkland.
It's north of Kirkland Lake?
Yeah.
Whereabouts? At Sesame? Okay.
Yeah, Siskinney, yeah. Yeah, there's always some plaques on the side
Oh,
of the
that
road
one,
up
okay,
there.
the drainage, whatever, okay. Yeah, okay. And have you approached the TMA?
Temiskaming Municipal Association, yes, I was at their meeting a month ago, so I spoke to about 20 folks, one of them was from your council here.
Okay, because that's where you would get your consensus, I would believe.
Yes, yes, so that, I've been calling up and going to various ones, I've been talking to Cobalt, to Coleman, to Temiskaming Shores, and now to Kirkland Lake, and then I'll be going out to the smaller ones, from this point on.
Okay, my last question is, in your vision of this tourism sort of strategy, what kind of tourists would come in this area, and what would they do?
Okay, that's what everybody asks, eh? Is it just a bunch of geologists coming in? No. What it is that we are trying to go through a loophole here that says that the geopark is based on geology and landscape. It's also based on pedology, which is soil sciences and agriculture. It's based on hydrology and even the glaciology that we've had, because the glaciers going through this area. It's based on all of those things. And without that, you can't have a geopark. But once you have a geopark, then you can look at all that fishing and the hunting and the snowmobiling and all the things that we have commonly been done, and then we can build on that. So we're not looking at so much of a new type of specific tourists that's all going to come in. We're going to be still working with the tourists that we have, but trying to open it up to other opportunities for the tourism. Right now, biking seems to be the big thing. They were talking about a bike trail that's coming up to Espanola to hit Highway 17, and then we'll go east and west to Sudbury and to Sault Ste. Marie, and this is the way they're bringing folks in from southern Ontario. We have a bike trail that goes from Montreal to Rouyn-Noranda and down to Ville-Marie. And all we have is that little short piece from New Liskeard over to Notre Dame du Nord in order to tie them together. Or we could tie it through Highway 66 here and go down. So that biking is one of the things of the future. The MTO has a specific budget that we can apply to and try to get something over time. They're already tied up with this other one on Highway 17. So you're going to have to apply for something 10 years down the road. But that is an opportunity. And people don't really go for the long-term bike, bike for a week at a time. They basically go out, drive to a certain point, and then bike and go from there. That's what they've been finding on these other sites. The other thing that it makes this a good time is that, I don't know if everybody's aware of it, but Opemican National Park on the east shore of Lake Temiskaming, they're spending $36 million right now to build that park on Lake Temiskaming. That is going to be in Quebec National Park. When you look at the costs that involved in putting together geoparks at St. John, New Brunswick, they spent a little bit over $1 million up to now, since 2008 to now. Tumbler Ridge, $500,000. But right now, $36 million has been spent in Quebec. UNESCO wants to see if in your geopark there has been some expenditures. So this geopark is going to have Pemmican as part of it. You're already spending $36 million. We don't have to spend another dime. All we got to do is show the flag, get over to their meetings, bring the people over here to look at this site, and we should be in. Because it doesn't mean that everybody has to spend $36 million. Pemmican's already done it. So we can build up slowly and reinforce the tourism strategies that we have right now. So it is a unique opportunity that these things are just coming together at the right point. Thanks.
Councillor Morgan. Oh, okay. Well, go ahead, Jim.
So I do have a motion, but I need a mover and a seconder. But the motion does say the council directs the Director of Economic Development and Tourism to investigate further Kirkland Lake's participation in the Geopark project.
That would be fine. All in favor?
So that was moved by Councillor Mino and seconded by Councillor Roman, that council directs the Director of Economic Development and Tourism to investigate further Kirkland Lake's participation in the Geopark project.
Okay, all in favor? Okay. Thank you, Graham. Thank you very much. You wouldn't be rude if you left the meeting, but you're more than welcome to stay.
I'll stay a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
I have a motion that's moved by Councillor Mino, seconded by Councillor Morgan, that council accepts the minutes of the following meetings. The Kirkland Lake Public Library held April 27, 2017. The meeting to open tenders for the 2017-2018 hired equipment held May 3rd, 2017. The regular meeting of council held May 16th, 2017. And the regular meeting with no items for discussions held May 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th, 2017. Just to clarify that those last meetings were held just to go into a camera meeting for the interviews for the CEO's position.
All in favor, acceptance of the minutes? Thank you. We have reports, item 6, reports of municipal officers and communications. Joanne, you're going to speak on the first 4.
Okay, this was an item that came in from Betty Smallwood, who works, she's the coordinator for the palliative care for the Temiskaming Elder Abuse Task Force. June 15th, yearly she always comes and asks for council to declare it as World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. And tomorrow, being June 7th, is the annual Spring Fling. The Spring Fling is an event that they hold that features information, education, and entertainment for seniors in our district. So the motion that I have is moved by Councillor Morgan, and it's seconded by Councillor Mino, that council declares June 15th, 2017 as World Elder Abuse Day in and for the town of Kirkland Lake, and that Mayor Antoniazzi endorse the attached proclamation.
All in favor? Carried.
Okay, so the next item is from the Kirkland Lake Mile of Gold Basketball, the Swamp Donkeys. They are looking to council to sponsor them in funding for a couple of applications that they have put forth. So one is for the Timber Kids Foundation. They hold an annual barbecue, and there's approximately $5,000 that they're looking to donate to the Swamp Donkeys. And the other one is for the Timiskaming Foundation. They've put in an application for $1,200. So they're looking for council to co-sponsor with them on this. This is a motion that's moved by Councillor Mino, seconded by Councillor Morgan. The council approves the request from the Mile of Gold Basketball Club to co-sponsor two separate applications for funding. Timber Kids Foundation for $5,000 and the Timiskaming Foundation for $1,200.
Any questions, comments? All in favor? Carried.
The next item, we've received a couple of resolutions from surrounding areas for council's consideration, and this did go out to council, and there were a couple of councillors who asked for it to come back. So this has to do with the 1/3 remuneration. It's part of the Income Tax Act that 1/3 of councils in smaller communities, they get 1/3 of what they receive is considered a tax-free expense allowance that they can use to discharge their duties as an elected officer. This is different from in the bigger cities. In the bigger cities, councils do have a separate budget, and the separate budget does allow for expenses. In our smaller communities, we don't have that, and so that's why the provision is that 1/3 of the salaries that you get is tax-free. So in 2017, the federal government did remove that, and so now there's a resolution that's been brought forth to have the government please look at this and bring it back, because for smaller communities, it is important for councillors.
And are we looking specifically in just northern communities or all small communities throughout the country?
I believe it's all small communities.
Okay.
So this is a motion that is moved by Councillor Morgan, seconded by Councillor Mino, that Council of the Town of Kirkland Lake supports Cheryl Gallant, MP, and Council of the Municipality of East Ferris in its petition to the federal government to reinstate 1/3 tax-free exemption for municipal politicians from communities that do not provide a budget for elected officials to cover the cost of their incidental expenses. And that this resolution be forwarded to the Honourable Bill Morneau, Minister of Finance, Charlie Angus, MP, Timmins James Bay, and Anthony Rhoda, MP, Nipissing Timiskaming.
All in favor? Carried.
Okay, and my last item for council is our summer meeting schedule. I did propose to council that we have 3 meetings in July and August. Generally, we only have 1 in July and 1 in August. But with the length of the list of items that I knew that were coming forward, I thought that maybe we should have 3 meetings instead of the 2. So my proposal originally was July 11th, July 25th, and August 15th. But I have heard back from a couple of councillors that they would prefer to just stick with 2 scheduled meetings, and then if staff feels that we would like council to meet again, then we can ask for a 3rd meeting. So I have 2 options for council, 3 or 2 meetings for the summer. My suggestion for, if we're going to do 2 meetings, it would be July 18th and August 15th, as opposed to the 3, which would be July 11th, 25th, and August 15th.
Any discussion? You know, I think historically, we've had 2. We've had
Yes.
1 in July, 1 in August. But that being said, we've always been available in case we had to reconvene for a special meeting. And I don't think that would change. So maybe we could do the one with 2 as we've always had, and then leave it open, but like as a resolution to vote. And of course, with the understanding that if we are needed at any time, that we are available.
So I have a motion that
Right.
is,
Oh, sorry,
Sorry.
sorry, Jean.
July 18, I'm not here for sure. So if you're going to 2 and go July 18, I'm not gonna be here. I'm
okay.
out of town.
We could go to July 11th, if
Yeah.
that would be okay with everybody? Okay. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Mino, and it's seconded by Councillor Morgan, that council approves the following summer schedule for council meeting dates: July 11th, 2017, and August 15th, 2017.
All in favor? Thank you. Item 6.2, Director of Community Services. Bonnie, you're going to come up and speak on Civic Park.
I'd like to give everyone an update on Civic, and the reason that I wasn't able to do a written report until just now was that we did have a deficiency visit earlier this morning, so this data is hot off the press. So earlier today, we did meet with the contractor for the Civic Service Project, which was CGV Contracting, and we also met with their subcontractor, which was Pedersen Construction. And we had a few issues that we were aware of in the fall, and they had advised us that due to weather, we had to wait until spring. As well, we wanted to see what some settling would do over the winter. They did want to wait until later on this year to come and do their deficiency visit, and we worked hard to get them to come. To me, it was a little bit late, but to them, it was a little early. So they did come today. Everyone agreed that there are a few areas that need to be looked at, and some of them are quite evident as you drive by. There does need to be some work on grading, as well as some more product put in. So whether it's some topsoil and some grass, or whether it's some of the chips on some of the pathways. So that will be addressed by Pedersen Construction over the next very short time, I believe. There was a lot of work done on drainage prior to this project being done, because we knew we had substandard earth conditions. So the town did some work, as well as in the contract there was a lot of drainage added. So we are at a much better point than we were earlier. However, we just have to remember that the organic material that is there is not ideal. We never would have been able to afford to pull it all out and supplement with the best. So we will have a wetter area in it sometimes than we would like. However, the areas that are pooling with water are definitely a concern, and those will be fixed and rectified. The other subcontractor who's going to come in is Lafleur Gardens. They will come in to do a site visit. We have 2 different types of grass at Civic. We have sod that was done on the ball field, and that was funded, and we have hydro seeding that was done in the rest of the park. And I would just like them to come in and look at the results of the hydro seeding. It's a bit sporadic. The information I received today from Pedersen was that is sometimes considered normal, and it takes a good year to get good mature grass and root system. However, we are going to have Lafleur come back and just confirm that it is where it should be. So now that we've had our deficiency visit complete, there are some things that Parks and Rec Department will do to get this park opened as soon as possible. We've got to make some cement pads for the benches and the garbage cans. We've got some bleachers to come into the ball fields. We've got some maintenance gates to be completed, and just a general park cleanup. The park is in great shape. When we walked around it today, it's just a gem, and we are very excited to open the doors to the public. We will have a grand opening, and we are going to do that in conjunction with Canada's 150th birthday, and that will be done during the Canada Day celebrations hosted by both the Kirkland Lake Festivals Committee and the town of Kirkland Lake. So the festivities on Canada Day will be similar to what we've seen in the past, but with some enhancement. We're certainly going to have a great opening ceremony by our Indigenous communities. We have live local entertainment throughout the afternoon, as we have had in the past. face painting, inflatables, a beer garden, food vendors. We'll add on, of course, use of our courts and multipurpose sport fields. So we'll have a beach volleyball tournament, a basketball tournament, probably a few more things to add on. We're going to extend our day in celebration of Canada's birthday. We're going to have an evening event as well with local musical entertainment. Jamie Taylor and his crew are going to play in the evening, and we will have phenomenal fireworks. We've kind of kicked it up a notch for fireworks once again. So that's going to be our grand opening. In terms of what else are we going to do at Civic, we are in the process right now of hiring student activity coordinators. We just have heard word about some funding that we were able to receive, which is great. It's not full funding, but it's partial, so that will help offset the costs. And they will be doing both structured and unstructured programming all summer long as soon as the kids are out of school. So in terms of unstructured, it just means that the park is open, there's equipment available, you can sign it out and come play at your leisure. In terms of structured activities, we will do everything that people are interested in, whether that's croquet or ultimate frisbee or ball hockey or baseball or slow pitch or tennis, whatever it is. We've got a great facility there. And we will begin the food market later on this month. We have a meeting tomorrow just to confirm our dates and times and things like that, just to get all of those ironed out of the way. And then tomorrow, once that final meeting's done, we'll have our formal invite go out to our local vendors through the chamber as well. And just to let people know that the response we've received has been very positive for the food market. So we do have a little bit of a window where we have some deficiencies to repair. I know everyone's keen, and we've had kids jump the fence. We've had kids in there playing, and I don't blame them. If I was a little younger, I might jump the fence too. It is a gem, as I said earlier. There's a few things we need to get worked on, and this is all part of the contract, and the contractors have been very receptive to the fact that there's a bit of work to be done. So they know that time is of the essence. They know I wanted to open this the beginning of May. So they said they will try to get everything planned within the next week or two. So the earliest day we can open those gates to the public, we will. We aren't waiting specifically for the grand opening. If it's in a week and a half from now, the doors will be open, and I'll just continue to inform people as time goes on. Our user groups are very keen to start playing on Civic ball field. So that, again, is a gem, and it's settled really, really nicely over the winter. We had some soft spots last fall. Walking it today, it's in beautiful shape. We've done 3 cuts already on the grass because with all this rain, things are growing. A couple of other things we do have to do. We have to commission our irrigation system for the ball field. It does have an in-ground irrigation system. We haven't needed it yet this year, but that's going to be commissioned Friday of this week, actually. We also have a rain sensor that's being added so that the irrigation won't go on, obviously, if there's a lot of moisture in the grass due to natural precipitation. So a couple of little things that are left. We had some tweaks to do with our chiller over the winter, and again, everything's under warranty, and everybody's been great. They've come back and done any tweaks that are required. We had all of our lights replaced, so there were a couple times over the winter that lights went out, and they actually replaced every light with a brand new system. So they felt it was due to moisture getting into the light, and that's why they were quickly burning out. So they changed the whole system, and again, that was at no cost to the corporation. So, questions or concerns that you may have heard, or anything I might be able to answer?
Councillor Chamillard.
Yeah, Bonnie, you mentioned all the problem we have, but the tennis courts, there seems to be no problem there. Why don't we open them?
The main thing is that there's so much areas of pooling water. Once you open the gates to the park, people kind of have access everywhere. The ground is soft
Yeah,
when
I
I
know,
walked
I
it today. So we just want to restrict it just to get those low areas built back
They only
up.
have about 12 weeks to play, for maybe 16.
I
and,
know.
well, we
I'm
lost
with you
6.
on that.
I mean, they're complaining all the time. Oh, okay.
Deep breaths. It'll be as short as we can get it. I know.
I guess one alternative might be to, because it's all cement sidewalk from the entrance to the basketball,
Yes.
the tennis. Why don't we just
We could.
put a fence?
If that's council's interest. My concern was if we're going to have 2 or 3 days of equipment in there next week, I'd rather just wait until that's done and then say it's open rather than it's open, it's closed. But we could open the sport court because you have good access on pavement to
all
get there,
pavement.
and we could block off the rest.
This week's a nice week.
It's a beautiful week.
Like, it doesn't look like a tennis court or a basketball court or a sports court until we get the nets. I
We have
mean,
them.
But they're in a box,
That's right.
and we are going to put them up? Like,
Yes, we had to wait.
we-
It was recommended to us not to do any work whatsoever except the cut on the ball field until the deficiency visit could happen, because they wanted to make sure it was in as pristine shape as possible, and we weren't out there. So until today, we weren't able to do anything, but we could get those nets up tomorrow and open at least the
and
basketball and
And we
tennis.
could keep everybody off the Unless they jump the fence.
Yeah,
But they
yeah,
could
yeah.
jump any fence, couldn't they?
Yes, we can
But
try.
I mean, a sign would be nice, but sometimes that doesn't work,
Yeah.
right? Keep off the grass.
We can try
But-
it, and you know what, if people are
Well, I mean,
honest and are
Yes.
listening to what we recommend.
you know, maybe as a
it stays
first
open.
step, we could put the nets up and put the basketball nets and make it look complete.
Sure.
And then,
We could put a snow fence too for that.
that's what I'm
part,
talking about.
Yeah,
That's what I'm, yeah,
Yeah.
you know, keep people away. Because what we don't want it to turn out to be is, it's about time, you know?
Yes.
Like, everybody is excited, the community is very proud of Civic,
yes,
but we don't want it never to open, so that when it does open, instead of exuberance and happiness, it's gonna be, well, it's about time they opened it. So if we take a proactive approach and get the nets up and let's get the people in there to play basketball, play tennis, and put a snow fence.
We
But
can
we
do that.
don't want to jeopardize any warranty
That-
either.
yeah.
And-
And we
and-
aren't, after today's visit, we've done our part, so that visit has been done, it's been minuted, I have those minutes, so we can open it piecemeal,
Yeah, it looks fantastic.
if that's the preference of
Looks
council.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Councillor Mino. Oh, I'm sorry, Pat, no, you were after Councillor Chamier.
Bonnie, just to confirm, the night of the fruit and vegetable market, the washroom facilities will be open?
Yes, they will.
Thank you.
Councillor Mino.
Bonnie, three things. The activity coordinator, when is that planned to be starting?
So
Is
we
it
just got
university
word on
or-
our funding last week. We've done interviews. We have one who are offering the position to, and one we're still doing some more interviews.
So that job would begin quite shortly.
Oh, yeah, like next week.
So that coordinator could actually supervise the access to the field as well?
I wouldn't want to station them there all the time, but
That was my next question.
Yeah.
Where is that office for that student going to be? And they're going to be involved only in civic, or are they going to do something else around town?
they can be all over town. I'd like to see them doing activities at primarily Civic, because that is our premier park, and we've got a lot of opportunity. But if we want to do a yoga in the park at Kinross one day, or we want to do kids' games at the Splash Park, those activity people can move.
They'll be moving around?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd personally like to see them, or that person, take office or that's what the report work would be.
Yes.
It's much more.
Oh, it makes
conducive
much more
to-
sense
to
than
developing the civic use and, you
Yes.
know, the programming, but see what you can do about that.
Yep.
The other thing is my wish list.
Yes.
The tennis backboard.
Yes,
You know, I spoke this with you before.
you did.
I'd like to see the tennis backboard facing the street, and at the back of that, if possible, some slide-in panels whereby we could sell advertising there on that backboard. But being a little bit of a tennis player, I'd like to hit the ball on my own sometimes, and if there's
Yep.
a board there, certainly make use of it.
Yep.
The other thing is some rollerblades or some inline skates on our pad. That's doable, I imagine.
It is doable, yes, that's fine.
Can maybe your student explore that
Absolutely.
concept? Perhaps rentals and stuff like that?
Yep.
I'd like to see that go. It's one of those little nighttime activities under the lights would be nice.
Yes.
And a bit of music. We did it with the public skating, so
Yes.
that in itself would be perhaps an activity. I know it's a logistic thing with the number of skates and stuff
Mhm.
like that, but and the other thing is, can people bring their own inline skates?
Yes, they can.
Free activities?
That's completely fine, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, Bonnie, thank you very much for your report. And we're anxious to get going, but we don't want to jump the gun where we're going to jeopardize any warranty or anything
I
like that.
challenge you all to
That's
a game
sort
of
of the
tennis,
message
and I
that
don't
I'm
play,
thinking.
so. Just to further, you will be receiving a formal invitation to everyone attend the grand opening, obviously, on Canada Day, and we'd love to have you part of our ceremony and festivities, so.
Thank you.
That invitation is forthcoming.
Thank you. Okay, item 6.3, Will, if you're going to come up and, is it, speak on, or is it, yeah, you will. You can bring anybody you like, man.
I appreciate that you have a fairly full agenda, so I'm going to give the Reader's Digest version of this report insofar that He comes next. He's not on liquor licensing for Heritage North, just to clarify. Last year, council directed staff to proceed with licensing the facility. We're in the closing stages of that now. We've had a couple of inspections. Things have been done as per the recommendations of the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario Authority. The next steps really are the final steps, in my opinion. We have roughly another $1,000 or so of expenditures. All that has been accounted for in the operating budget. The emphasis will be on training. The liquor inspector, Rob Duguay, has been very generous in guiding us through much of the process, and he has a PowerPoint presentation is basically training, everything you need to know for serving alcohol in a facility and dealing with that, and he's willing to put that on for us. Now, obviously, HN staff will attend that, as will any other corporate staff that, say, Bonnie or anybody feels that it's important. But the most important thing will be that it's the time to start bringing in bartenders. That, as we had discussed in the previous presentation to council, would be a contracted service. In the report, it breaks out roughly how much it would cost us, say about $600 in hiring a bartender to earn about $3,000 versus we're spending, I think what it is, about $450 now to earn about $1,200. So we'd like to go forward with that, put the advertisements out and start bringing people in and talking to them. We would like to have a stable of bartenders, and they come with their own people for serving alcohol and that. We will also be looking at security people, who can we get on tap when we need it, and what the cost will be for that. Mostly we're trying to stay within the same parameters we laid out for council in the previous presentation last year, and if there's any deviations, obviously we'll let you know. So, to summarize, it was a report for your information purposes. Those are the next steps we want to take forward, and we welcome any guidance you may give us.
Councillor Kiley.
Yeah, well, just to clarify, the security, did we include that in our fee structure, or it's built into it, or is it an add-on?
We couldn't include it in the fee structure for the same reason as with the bartending. We just don't have those prices yet, but any of those kind of costs would be charged back to the renters
Thank you.
at cost.
One of the questions I have, Wolf, is on the projected revenues in that. You're showing that without a license, it's roughly $300 roughly to make 1,200. Is that what?
Yeah, sorry, that's correct. On an average, we gross about $1,200 per event under the current model right now.
Okay, so if we get a license, we're going to spend about $6,000 on staff, or we're going to gross 33,000, right? So what would be the net on that? Half?
At this
So are
point,
we
I'll
going to
turn it
spend
over to-
600 to make?
Yeah.
Like 60% of what you sell at a bar generally is what you make in profits.
So with a license, we're going to spend about 6 to make about 1,800.
And that's fairly
About
conservative. That was a
1,800.
conservative guess. That's $20 a person. I mean, I know some weddings that would be more than that, some would be less.
But this would only be for events where the renter doesn't want to get his own license.
That is correct. The model that we brought forward is that it's one option that the client can take. They can still get their own permits. They can go with the Federal Tavern or any other person. This is just one model to make it easier. As I said last year, if you think that this is going to turn the tables and make break even or earn profit, no, it is about extending the best service we can.
Has there been many rentals where we've lost the rental because the people didn't want to get their own license?
I can talk on
Yeah.
So usually like funerals, stuff like that, that people come in last minute and they want something, this will be very good for that. We'll be able to give them that kind of service on a split second's notice. right now when they come in and immediately we tell them they have to get the insurance and they have to get their own license or go through a caterer. Some caterers have to have 10 days notice no matter what. For celebrations of life, that just wouldn't happen. They can get the emergency permits, but then they have to find the bartender. So I think this will help a lot with things like that, or even quick business dinners that people want to have.
I have a motion that it's moved by Councillor Morgan, seconded by Councillor Mino, that council directs the Director of Economic Development and Tourism to conclude the liquor licensing process at Heritage North, to advertise for bartenders, and to arrange training in coordination with the AGCO.
All in favor? Okay, Will from East Link.
Back last year, we were exploring alternatives for communications, trying to bring down the costs. One of those costs with the fire department specifically related to pagers. They're paying a fairly pretty penny just to get pagers fixed and then purchasing new ones, and I think that Rob has now run into some other problems in terms of the vendor and that. We brought forward a push-to-talk system. It basically uses a ruggedized telephone, turns the whole telephone network into a walkie-talkie network that you can in and out. The idea was, first and foremost, to replace the pagers with the push-to-talk. Going down the road, we're looking to see, could we replace the actual radios? Well, there's a certain element there that we cannot overcome at this point, and that is the need for interoperability between different agencies, as well as health and safety. The radios provide that. One is that they work on a dedicated backbone, so we don't have to worry about networks going down, say a cell tower catches fire or crashes, whatever, or through service levels. And the second part of it is the interoperability with other agencies like the OPP and whatever. On a crisis, they have a channel. What did you say? One was mutual aid, one was for yourselves, and
the OFM.
yeah. So for that reason, you know, the radios will be within the emergency structure for quite a while. That being said, we are trying to get on Bell Canada's on their agenda so that they can make Kirkland Lake a test case for interoperability between PTT and radio. That's something that we're working on right now. It will be something we bring back in the future for you. In the meantime, this report deals specifically with a antenna that the former chief had installed on the Eastlink site, and the agreement with Eastlink to continue to use, basically to host our antenna array on their towers. It is for this reason we're bringing it forward. It has been accounted for in the operating budgets. There's no change to that. So.
Okay. Is there any questions? Because that'll be coming back at the end for a bylaw.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay. So Ashley, you're up on item 6.4.
Yeah, apparently. He's good at it. Okay, so I just wanted to bring our notice that we placed in the municipal update. As you're aware, I was planning on bringing forward a topic every month for the next 8 months to try and tackle these dimensions of age-friendly community planning. So I just wanted today to introduce Brooklyn Rosa, which is our planning intern for the year. Most of you may know her. She's a Kirkland Laker, so she's born and raised in Kirkland Lake.
Well, welcome aboard.
Yes. So she's going to be holding a meeting with me on June 19th here in council chambers to talk about communication and information. So it's just to get some ideas on how we can get the information out to the public. How do they use, like, how do they hear about things going on in town? Most people say, I heard it at Tim Hortons. And so how do we get that information out and circulate to them? A lot of them that we had come to our meeting back in April had specified that they don't read the newspaper, they don't listen to the radio. So in that instance, how do you get the word out? So basically, we're going to look at strategies that have worked effectively, what other municipalities and stakeholders are doing, and what we can improve on. So just wanted to put it out there that if anybody is interested in attending, we are holding that event on June 19th.
Okay, thank you.
Tony?
Yes, Councillor Mino.
Ashley,
Yes.
one of the residents, a fellow colleague of mine who's retired and he's just gun-ho, chopping at the bit, wants to be part of that committee. I believe he submitted his name, but he said he had not been contacted.
Really?
So can you retain the name of Ray Millette?
Yes, of course.
He
I
was
have
adamant in
emailed
telling
him.
me, I think you do have him, but
Yeah.
he said he hadn't been called, but I don't know if you had a meeting or not.
He was at the last meeting.
He was there?
He was
Yeah.
here.
Okay, well, anyways, just.
I'm pretty
just
sure
telling
he's
you-
been on our
Telling you that I
correspondence.
was telling it for him.
That's perfect. I'll make sure that he gets this invite.
Thanks.
No problem. Any other questions on, we'll just hammer these out. Keep going. All right, so just to bring forward a spring waste management update, we just wanted to bring this for your information only. As you're aware, we just finalized the free tipping fees at the landfill, which resulted in additional staffing costs for the 2 Sundays that were there, that we were open for, and it did result in some reductions in revenues. They did see about 1,200 vehicles use the free tipping at the landfill site, which is great. We also did the household hazardous waste and special waste collection event, and it did go very well. We had a nice sunny day for a change, so we did see about 200 vehicles come in and use that service. As for, I believe Councillor Morgan, why couldn't I think of that? Councillor Morgan had requested that we notify or keep you posted on how many notices had been sent out. We had 79 notices sent out with our property standards officer. He's gone ahead and taken a look at the properties again now that the cleaning week is over. And we do still have 12 properties are in violation, so we are following up with them to try and deal with those violations. In terms of that, we can't really give you any information on how much money was spent for the hazardous waste event at this time because we need to go back and forth between funding agencies and determine what is going to be considered funded items and not. So we should have that information back to you in a couple months.
I'd just like to try my hand at good news. We do want to thank some of the local businesses that supported the event. Richard Freeman, B&R Environmental Services, as well as Subway Kirkland Lake. Munish Prajapati and his staff, they provided food. Richard obviously provided facilities for us. And also to thank the staff. They came out and between the flies, the occasional thunderburst, and the temperature and the dust, they put in their time and it was much appreciated. It went very smoothly. I think that it was a very worthwhile event and hopefully we can do it again. Okay, so we have some certificates of appreciation. On behalf of Mayor and Council, we'll deliver them tomorrow then.
Okay, thank you.
Businesses.
Thank you very much.
Is there questions at all for that? Or?
No, other than great job, and thank you.
Okay, moving along, this is sort of related to the material hazardous waste event. We have, we need council's approval to sign an agreement that will allow us to collect funding related to automotive materials. So anything such as, anything corrosive, toxic, flammable, and reactive components. I think they were saying oil filters, used oil containers, and antifreeze and their containers for those. So we just, this report's just to ask permission to pass a bylaw to delegate authority for us to sign an agreement to receive funding on that.
And that'll come back as a bylaw.
Yes.
at the end.
Okay, so I'm not sure if we've had a request like this so far, but I wanted to bring this to council's attention. So when the Crown proceeds to sell land at this point, they are requiring the municipality to comment on whether or not we are okay with the sale of Crown land happening. And I'm sure there's various reasons why they want that. Obviously, our official plans are all different from town's perspectives. What our goals are and what our objectives are for Crown land may be different in different municipalities. So they are asking for our advice, or sorry, for us to submit a letter just expressing whether we have any concerns or are okay with the sale of Crown land happening. So in this instance, the Crown land is actually located to the or north of Goodfish, and it's adjacent to the last property. So just in this area here where the green is, right next to 44. So the intent is to have this person purchase 500 feet of frontage on Goodfish. And as a planner, there's a little bit of concerns that I did highlight in the report for this. The biggest being if he was intending to sever off a piece of Crown land for the purpose of creating one additional lot. We have requirements on Nettie and Goodfish to force people to, not force, but have people compile a lake capacity study to determine whether or not the water quality is going to be negatively affected by having further development on those lakes. Those things haven't been done since we amalgamated those two townships. So in order to see more development happen on those lakes, it's important to safeguard the drinking water for the rest of the community that are living out there right now. So my biggest concern with, severing off a piece of land for that purpose would be he'd need a zoning amendment so that it's consistent with the surrounding area as well. And he'd have to get a lake capacity study done to rectify or to recognize that additional development can take place. So the other option for him is if he was purchasing land for the purpose of adding it to his, the requirement for a lake capacity assessment wouldn't necessarily come into play. We probably would have less concern. We would request that a deeming bylaw take place so that 44 becomes amalgamated with that piece of land. That's the only thing that I would recommend. So basically at this point, we're just asking whether or not council's in favor of that and which way they want to go. Do you want me to just highlight those concerns, and like both of them, and have them stipulated in the letter?
Councillor Kiley.
Ashley, is the capacity study done first?
Yes.
So,
Oh, you mean before the sale?
yeah,
No. It's if development is proposed.
so is there a site plan already in effect in that area?
No, that's another topic we'll discuss tonight. So in this instance, what the process would be is that we would write a letter saying that we have no objections other than what I had stated. So, from a planning perspective, if he's looking to buy it for the purpose of creating an additional lot or additional lots, because he could technically subdivide more, then he'd have to go through the lake capacity study prior to obtaining approval for consent or approval for a building permit for a house. Zoning amendment would also be required depending on the size of the lot that's proposed. If he's planning on adding land to his property, like I said, the only thing that would be necessary is a deeming bylaw to make sure that it's just a straight addition to his property versus him having a separate lot.
Yeah, I think the fact that if it's gonna become all one parcel under one registered owner, then if he does want to subdivide in the future, he has to come to council
Yeah,
and
he
meet
does.
our requirements. So that would protect that aspect of it.
He'd have to go through the committee of adjustment for consent and come to council likely for a zoning amendment. So he would do both.
Councillor Morgan.
I think you've answered my question, Ashley, but just buying that property and deeming it with the other doesn't change the zoning of that property, though, eh?
No, it does not. And it's very normal to have split zoning on properties. That's not an issue.
Okay, so much like what Councillor Kiley said, if there's any further either zoning change or plan of subdivision or subdividing or anything like that, that has to come back to another process?
Yeah,
Okay.
so he would be only permitted so Crown land in that area is zoned rural, so he would only be permitted to use that side of the property for those rural purposes that are there.
Councillor Roman.
I'm in favor of either alternative going ahead. My concern would be there's certainly opportunity for additional development along that shore. Is what he's proposing to purchase going to affect the road allowance or potential road allowance going through that area? 'Cause
Yes.
I understand right now that the road that's there is not municipally maintained because there's width issues.
Mhm. So the road allowance is actually municipal road allowance. It's on the plan of subdivision, but it's not declared a municipal road because it doesn't meet those criteria. So it's owned by the town, but it's not maintained by the town.
Okay.
If that makes sense. It's extremely confusing, the Nettie and Goodfish roads, to try and understand it is is, yeah.
Will there be sufficient road allowance then?
We would put that in the report, so I believe the intent is to be south of that road, so it'd actually be, that road would continue on, and then south of it would be the portion that he's interested in purchasing. We wouldn't put us in a situation where we can't continue that road. Like, we should be able to continue that road, is what you're saying, right? If we ever,
Certainly, but
yeah.
will somebody go out there and look at it? There, like, I don't know what's there, if there's rock face or something that would require it to go some, you know,
Wander.
I would just be concerned that what's being proposed doesn't block off any further access. And
Yeah, I can definitely specify that in the report and do a site visit and get a little bit more detail, so I can, yeah, spell it out a little bit more for them.
Councillor Mino.
Actually, this, in theory, so Crown land becomes municipal land? That Crown land becomes municipal land?
No, the Crown, so the Crown just wants to ask us permission on whether or not we're okay with them selling Crown land to a private individual.
Okay, so the rules governing the use of that land are under Crown lands,
Yeah, so
whatever.
they still are zoned municipal, and the way that the zoning bylaw comes into effect on Crown land is that the Crown has to do its due diligence to meet our bylaws, but they could kind of supersede us because they're the Crown.
So a scenario, this person wants to build a huge warehouse or a huge garage or whatever business, would that be allowed?
No, because it's privately owned at that point, because he's buying the land from the Crown.
Once once the Crown dispenses of the land, it is treated as other municipal property, and the same rules will
private,
apply then,
yeah.
as private property within the municipality. The letter that the M&R is asking for is just a matter of consultation in due course. It comes from back in the day when they were just dispensing with land and not talking to the communities as part of their consultation process, and it allows them to ensure that when they put the sale forward, the communities or municipalities' concerns are noted on file for that. After they sell the land, it's up to us to follow up as we would with anybody else.
Councillor Barker.
So is there any other opportunity for other residents in that area to voice any concerns in this process? Or is it because it's the Crown that's kind of eliminated?
You know what, I don't want to answer that because I don't know, but I'm assuming that they only notify those that are going to be affected by it. So there may have been a notice sent to the neighboring property owner. They notify the municipality because they want the comment to come from the municipality as a whole, but I'm just thinking in previous situations where somebody is buying a shore road allowance in front of someone else, yes, they will be notified because it's going to directly affect them. But I'm not sure in this instance whether that will have any effect on other people. Nothing stops people from going to the Crown and asking for land. You mean that if you want to buy Crown land, you have every right to go through that, and there's a whole process on the website on how to go about it. So that option is available for everybody.
Thank you, Ashley.
You're welcome.
Councillor Morgan.
Just going back to my previous comment, Ashley, about the zoning, what is this Crown land zoned as right now?
Rural.
Now, so that a large building could be constructed on that property then?
The Crown could construct a large building if they'd like, yes.
No, I'm talking about the new owner.
Well, yeah, you're right.
Okay. So they just have to apply for a building permit. There's nothing,
So here's where, if you're creating a new lot, so Crown lands, let's say they sell the south portion of that, 500 feet of frontage, and they have a new lot there, that's what I'm saying needs to go through a lake capacity study prior to them selling the land, because they are exempt from consent process. So they would have to go through a lake capacity study, that'd be my recommendation, prior to the Crown subdividing a piece of land and selling it for the purpose of creating a new lot. Does that make sense?
I guess I'm just concerned that with such a large piece of land, what's the ability for the new landowner to construct on that and to diminish the enjoyment of the rest of the residents on the lake?
They have every right to apply for building permit, but one will not be
Okay.
given until a lake capacity study and the planning policy is met.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
So that even if the two parcels of
Yeah,
land
so-
are joined, he still can't build on it
Well, if
without
he
that
joins
capacity.
it, there's a rule where you can't have more than one dwelling.
Okay, so that would answer the other question. If he just simply joins it and then tries to build on afterwards, it's addressed by the other rule, only one dwelling.
But if it's a separate lot, then yeah, he's got every right to build. But again, that official plan policy is coming into play and saying you need a lake capacity study before you build a house. And it should be as part of the consent.
Okay, but I'm not talking about a house. I'm talking about like a factory.
Oh, I mean agriculture, anything that I pulled up on the rule,
Right.
that would be permitted. Yeah.
Maybe a quarry.
Existing one. If there's one already there, they can continue to operate it. But, yeah, anything that's in that rural zone, they could do,
And they could apply for a permit and get it.
so long as the lake capacity study is completed and shows that there's no effect on the rest of the
Okay.
neighboring properties.
Ashley, could we support the request, but stipulate that he has to roll it into one property? Like you know, to support the request, thinking that he's going to want to make more lots, I'm not really in favor of that, but to give the property owner some more land and put it into one lot, wouldn't that restrict him from what he could do?
Yes, so in that instance, we'd give him the deeming bylaw, he'd apply for a deeming bylaw, we'd merge the two properties together, and nothing stops him, let's say 10, 15 years from now, and that's in his name, to apply for consent and subdivide it later as well.
It would
It's not
just-
stopping him.
No, it wouldn't stop him,
It's just-
but what it's doing is it's sort of telling the Crown that we are in we do support it, but we support it for the fact of the resident wanting to make a bigger property for himself.
Yeah.
And if, you know, that's, for me, that's, I think is a, then if he wants to down the road, subdivide it, then that's a whole different question, right?
Yeah, it would be, so, and this might just end up confusing you guys more, but the Crown land's exempt from requiring consent applications, so you're not gonna see a consent application because this gentleman wants to buy or purchase land from the Crown. They can do that without coming through us.
Yeah.
Once he puts that property in his name and joins it with 44, it's his privately owned property, and he will need to go through a consent on those pieces later and follow our process.
Councillor Mino.
Just another question about the lake capacity. Is that study applicable to the rest of the residents there? Can they use it after?
So the lake capacity study only comes into play when you're creating new lots,
Yeah.
or if you're rezoning land to create a residential building lot. So lots that are currently on Goodfish that are vacant right now but zoned for residential purposes do not need a lake capacity study
Because they already met it?
because the lots are already in
They're
existence.
already residential.
So it's already zoned for that use. So they can come in, grab a building permit and go ahead. But if you're creating a new lot, or if you're rezoning a open space zone to a residential zone, then you would require that lake capacity study to determine whether or not the lake can withhold that extra development.
Is the lake capacity study specific to what is being proposed, or can another neighbor borrow it from him if he's doing something? Use the same lake capacity study?
Yeah, so the lake capacity study, typically when they're done, they'll say how many residents they're able to withhold. So it'll say, usually what happens is if somebody's coming in and wanting to do 5 lots, the lake capacity study will look at those 5 lots. It won't be a whole, yeah, they'd probably have to do another one if
Okay,
it
so
came
it
down
may
to
be
it.
specific to whatever somebody else is doing then?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I meant.
Once a lake capacity is completed, and if that lake capacity study says, oh, this lake can hold another 20 homes, then yeah, we're probably fine to say for the next 20 homes, we don't need to worry about having someone do another lake capacity study. But, in most instances, when I've seen them, it's directly related to the development that's being proposed. Unless we trigger it and do one.
What's the waterfront look like there?
It's okay.
Is it swampy? I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah?
I mean, it's a stamp of a lake, you know,
I'm
it's
just-
very small.
I'm just, wondering why this was not even pursued before in terms of developing that. I mean, it's not that I encourage it, but the thing is, if it's that appealing, why did the road not continue?
I think with Goodfish and Goodfish and Nettie, it was to rectify existing situations. When we amalgamated, the subdivisions came in once to subdivide the houses that were already there.
Yeah.
we haven't looked at further development opportunities on either lake.
Yeah, okay,
At this
it's never
point.
been identified in our potential plans
No.
of residence. And now it is, okay.
Councillor Kylie?
Ashley, who does this lake capacity study? Is it MOE or?
It'd be private environmental consultants that'd be hired on. So A&A Environmental, I believe, does some. There's a few in Timmins that have businesses and contracting firms that go ahead and do a full analysis on the lake itself, take samples.
So that person will
That
have to
individual would
pay
have to
for-
pay for that, yeah.
Okay.
And then we have the full rights to peer review those studies. So if we don't feel like it's adequately meeting our needs and we're still not comfortable with proceeding forward, we can get it peer reviewed and have a consultant of our choosing review the findings to see whether or not it's okay. And that's all done at the expense of the owner.
So if a lake capacity study is done by a company for the, say for the owner, and if there's a opposition to that, and another lake capacity study is done by someone else, are the studies done so that they're going to end up with the same result? So it depends who hires.
There's some biasness.
So
That's
what would be the purpose of a capacity study?
a peer
if-
review. Yeah, we would get it peer reviewed in that instance, and we'd get somebody of our own to be the middle person to decide which way it should go. And we'd probably rely on our environmental coordinator to make a comment as well, because he's qualified in those type of areas as well. So it's kind of like a lawyer.
Depends
You
who
can yell
hires,
at it. You can
who
argue
hires
it
the
a bunch of different
consultant.
ways.
That's sort of the dangerous part, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But getting back to the gentleman on Good Fish Lake,
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing some consensus to, but I think we have to put some stipulations or tell the province why we're approving it.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I think to protect ourselves, I would like to see the fact that he has to roll them into one lot. And then whatever they want to do going forward, it'll be a decision of this council or another council,
Mm-hmm.
and they can decide.
Mhm.
But I think just to support it openly and no conditions, you know, we're sort of telling the province that we don't care what they do on that. And I think we do, right?
Yeah, no, for sure.
I can understand someone wanting to have more property, but I feel it would be improper to support someone wanting to have more property just because they want to expand and sell some lots, you know? But, so what kind of a clause could you put in there that, it's not a clause, but it's something that we would tell the province, right?
Yeah,
And
and-
support.
The province has every right to take our comments and
They can do whatever they like with it, right?
exactly. What I do plan on saying is that I'm noticing around the table that we're supportive of him adding land to his property. So we can say that we're supportive of that, but then just mention what the process would be if he's proceeding with potential land severances in the future. I think that's important to be upfront with him, so he's understanding, so he doesn't get the land and propose to go and do consents and then realize he's got a bunch of implications coming with planning and
Because if he puts this into his property, then his property value is going to go up.
Yeah.
And his assessment is going to go up. And he's going to pay more property taxes to the community. And that's really our role, isn't it, to increase tax base.
And with that argument,
You know.
I would argue that if he developed 5 lots on Good Fish and developed them all, that would be worth a lot more in taxes than.
Yeah, but we're not here to promote,
I know, I'm
someone
just,
else
I
getting
know,
rich.
sorry, I'm just,
We're here to protect the lake and to protect the people that are on the lake now.
yeah, no, I agree.
So I would want to see that stipulation that he has to roll it in right away and make his property one.
Yeah.
If that's, unless there's some opposition to that. Councillor Kiley?
Yeah, under the municipal act, doesn't it, if you buy the next door neighbor's property and register it in the same name as your name, it automatically merges. It's not a case of requiring, isn't that automatically happen?
On mining claims, so anything that's not on a plan of subdivision will automatically merge on title. In this instance, 44 Bernhardt Drive is in a plan of subdivision, so it will not merge with the neighboring property. So we have
So-
to, it has to go through that deeming bylaw process to deem it not on a subdivision so that it can merge.
Maybe as Tony said, then one condition should be that it is gonna be the same registered owner
And then go through the
to
deeming
ensure
bylaw.
them.
Yeah, because,
stays
like,
that way.
yeah, exactly. Because our discussion is really not on, do we want to increase, or do we want to allow more properties on good fish?
That's not his request either.
That's not what we're discussing, right? If that ever comes up, then that'll have to be discussed, but.
What I've done is I've split this into to two resolutions, just because I did hear that you wanted to deem it, or the mayor has said, so I think you need to vote on that. That needs to be a decision of council. So I do have a resolution that needs moved and seconded by, and it says that the council directs the town planner to include the condition to deem the crown property with the applicant's property. So we need a consensus of council or a decision of council that that is one of the conditions that you definitely want to see.
In favor?
So then the second part of that resolution or that issue is that council directs, it's moved by Councillor Mino, seconded by Councillor Mino, no, sorry. It's moved by Councillor Mino, seconded by Councillor Morgan. The council directs the town planner to submit a letter to the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry in favor of the resident purchasing Crown lands with the conditions as presented in the report, as presented.
All in favor? Carried. Number E.
So this report actually kind of flows along the whole waterfront areas. I'm requesting whether or not council would be interested in updating its site plan control agreement bylaw. The current one that's in effect was done in 1985, and it basically regulates higher density residential buildings, so anything higher than a triplex or triplex and up, commercial, industrial, and institutional properties throughout the town. So what that means is that when a new construction is taking place or an addition to some sort of existing building is taking place, they are subject to site plan control, which basically regulates lot coverage, parking and loading areas, snow storage, the maintenance of parking areas with the entrances, drainage patterns, and all of that fun stuff. There's a big push with the province and with other municipalities to look at controlling development on waterfront properties and in trailer parks. So the reasons they want to do this is to protect obviously the lake quality. Some municipalities actually have within their site plan control agreements control mechanisms on their septic, so that you make sure that you get inspections done every 4 to 5 years, so that there's nothing happening where it's leaking into the water. And then trailer parks, it's the same thing, just control on how many units are in there. And then, having that triggers, if they want more, they need to come see us, and we can then trigger the appropriate agencies, such as Timiskaming Health Unit and the Ministry of Environment, if necessary, to be sure that those residents are safe. So this is just a report to ask council if they'd like me to explore the opportunity to bring back that 1985 bylaw. My first thing to do would be to hold a public meeting to discuss this with the public, to see what their input is on it, because I am hearing mixed reviews. Some people say they don't want it because it's going to cause them to have to incur additional costs every time they do something to their property. Then I'll hear the other side, which is my neighbor doesn't get his septic permit or septic system inspected, and it's causing me a bunch of problems, and I wish that there was control placed on them so that they'd have to get it checked. So I just looking for council's feedback on that one.
Councillor Kiley.
Yeah, one concern I have, Ashley, is this is covering new development. It doesn't cover the existing dwellings out there now. Back in 1978, believe it or not, the Ministry of Natural Resources said, well, I think it's Morset Township in particular, was grossly overdeveloped, And at that time, there was, I believe was the Deloy subdivision was looking to subdivide into 41 lots. I don't believe there's any site plan or any agreement in place, or there ever has been a lake capacity study. And I think when we're looking at this, I think we can't just look at new development, but make sure that we're covering the existing dwellings and camps that are out there.
So the,
Otherwise, they can turn around and start adding more campgrounds, more subdividing more lots.
so to answer your first question, which is that it only targets new development, it's not, it's true. The only time it would come into play is if an addition to a building was proposed. So if somebody was adding on to their building, or building a garage, or building a shed, or building a dock, even if you'd like to get that particular, it would trigger the site plan control agreement to be entered into. So it's anytime somebody comes to us and says, I need a building permit for something, we'd say, hold it, we're gonna do site plan control, let's keep a good control on what's on your property, and you can also, control the vegetation that's in the front to allow so there's not enough or making sure there's not runoff happening, controlling that a little bit, and then putting in those septic permit inspections and making it mandatory for them to come and show us that they've had it inspected within a certain time frame. So it does eventually catch up, but it's not like everyone's subject to site plan control at the start. It's just when somebody comes in to build something new.
For curiosity, was that Deloy subdivision ever approved?
Deloy subdivision's completed. That was approved back in 2010, I think.
So there still is concern of the lake capacity. It's never been done.
Yeah, so the existing lots, this is where I was kind of going with Councillor Mino's comment, was the existing lots that are on, I think there's only 3 or 4 lots on Nettie that are vacant and zoned for residential development. They are okay to continue to develop based on the zoning prescriptions that are in the bylaw. They do not need a lake capacity study. So if there's lots that are there, and I think there's quite a few of them that are zoned open space, and I think that's Deloy that still owns them, if they want to rezone their properties for the purpose of constructing residential development, they would need a lake capacity study. Because the way that they did that study was, okay, the properties that are here that are zoned residential or cottage development are allowed to construct, and they will be okay to continue on and build, and it shouldn't have an effect on the water. That was based on the 70s, or I think it was 1978 when it first started. So now, if there's any new lots that are proposed for residential purposes, that's when the lake capacity study would kick in.
I guess my concern would be that everybody's treated equally.
Yeah.
The people that have built out there got the permits and did everything to code, so that if anybody's expanding their existing properties or campgrounds, that they have to meet the same code as everybody else. And I think if we're gonna sit down with the public, we've gotta bring that out and deal with it all at the same time. It will cause some controversy, I'm sure.
Yeah, it will.
There'll be some in favor, some not. Thank you.
Councillor Morgan.
Along that same vein, Ashley, you mentioned if somebody comes to us that wants to do work, do we have the ability to discover, either through whatever means, that there is work being done and we can intercept that?
Yep.
Okay,
And we do.
all right.
So with regards to the site plan, really quickly, if that's looked at, then anybody out there that wants to do work or additions to their property would have to have a site plan. People that want to build a garage, why would they have a problem with doing is there any cost to doing this? And where does the cost come?
User fees. So our user fee right now is $1,200 for residential properties, but that's high density residential. And then we have the commercial user fee, which is $1,545, I think. But if we were to go ahead with this process, I think there should be a smaller user fee established for residential purposes.
Yeah. So if we put a site plan on, say,
The lake. Or,
and somebody wants to put a small little garage, they have to get a permit.
Yep.
And in order for us to decide whether we're going to allow that, then they have to accompany a site plan. That would just be a drawing, right?
yeah, so the site plan is actually, so site plan control, and this is things I do want to talk to the public and bring recommendations back to you. If we can determine how big you build, like how we're gonna trigger that site plan control agreement process. So if it's someone building a 10 by 12 shed to put some stuff in while he builds his house, we're not gonna trigger site plan control when they build the shed, but we will trigger it when they do the building permit for the house. So there's gonna be a little bit of, I don't know. if
So
there's
having
gonna
a
be
site plan
stipulation.
control or not, is it going to change the fee structure?
Yeah, well, it won't change the fee structure right
No.
now, unless I would recommend that if we're going ahead with site plan control on waterfront properties, they shouldn't be charged $1,200 every time they do a site plan control agreement. That's a little
Agree.
expensive.
Yeah, I agree.
I would try and encourage them and say this is a good thing because it's gonna protect you and future owners and, you know, give them half the price and say it's a $600 agreement. There's still legal fees because it does get legally registered on title, so that it follows with the property, so that when you're buying your property, you know that septic system inspections have taken place every 5 years, here's the proof, you know you're protected. So there's wins and there's not. I mean, it is going to result in additional control. Municipal politics, and we're sticking our fingers in something that we haven't before. And whether council wants to proceed with that, we can make that determination based on what the public say.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking that site plan control is there to protect the neighbors as
Yes.
well. I mean, that's why we
Yes.
want it, to
Mhm.
protect the neighbors, so
And from sensitive land
it's a good thing
uses,
for the whole lake.
buffering.
It's a
Yeah.
good thing for the whole lake, because we just can't put site plan control on a certain segment of the lake. I mean, that
That's
would
right.
be,
That's right.
that would be improper and, you know, certainly improper. But we can, it would be for everyone. I think it's good, and it would protect the lake.
That's right. Just wanted to say that the purpose is not to be punitive or restrictive in any way. It's bringing us up to the same level as most other municipalities, and certainly the direction the province is pushing us to go in. It is designed to protect the environment, to protect the individuals currently and when they go in the future to sell their house, and more than anything else, it brings it to the same fair and equitable level that it is elsewhere in the community. Everybody else has to deal with that right now. So let's make it fair, let's apply it across municipality, but to do so in a fair way too, not to take them to the cleaners on charges and all that. It is designed to make things better, and the fee structure should reflect that, to encourage it.
So I have a motion that is moved by Councillor Barker, seconded by Councillor Kiley. The council directs the town planner to hold a public meeting to discuss updates to the site plan control agreement bylaw.
All in favor? Certainly.
Is Morissette and Bernhardt part of the official plan?
Yes. Okay,
So item F?
so we have received a request from Kirkland Lake Gold to sign just a document that says that we're okay with them being a municipal property to do some progressive mine hazard rehabilitation on some of their, in some areas through town. So the 3 areas they've given us is 5 Summerhays, 4 Wright Hargreaves, and 6 Tweedsmuir. Their intent is to backfill the Wright Hargreaves 101 stope series, to cap the Wright Hargreaves number 2 shaft, and to cap the 302 raise located at 6 Tweedsmuir. So I have been in discussions with them, and they've assured me that there should not be any traffic implications at this time. They are going to notify me if that does come up, and they do need to use the road allowance in order to properly mitigate that hazard. They have not been in touch with the residents of the 2 properties yet because they were waiting for municipal approval. And I did end up getting some timeframes for them for you, so I figured that was probably going to be a question that came up. They're expecting the one right by the LCBO, which is 5 Summerhays, to take approximately 13 days, and they're starting today, or yesterday, I think they started. Then the replacing of the cap for 4 right Hargreaves is supposed to take about 15 to 30 days, and then the 6 Tweedsmere where the Discovery Rock is, they've got one there and it's supposed to take about 15 to 30 days as well. So that one there's the last on the list and likely will have the most impact from a traffic perspective if they do need to use the road, but they said that they would communicate with us directly to inform us if that does come up.
It'd be similar to the remedial work that Malartic is doing around.
Yeah.
So I have a motion that's moved by Councillor Kiley, seconded by Councillor Barker, that council permits the proposed mine hazard rehabilitation by Kirkland Lake Gold, Inc. to take place at the following locations: 5 Summerhays Road, 4 right Hargreaves Avenue, and 6 Tweedsmere Road.
All in favor? Carried.
The next topic is, we'll be dealing with drainage at King George Properties. Basically, the recommendation is, we're asking council to direct staff to take measures to correct current drainage issues as well as to prevent any future ones, and also to improve the sales potential of some of the lots there. That's essentially what we're coming up with. We've looked at a number of different ways to do it. The one that we're recommending is by creating the laneway. The survey cost we put in the report was roughly $7,000. We're fairly certain we can bring that down substantially. About what percent you said?
Yeah, it's 3,500 plus HST for the survey is what I was quoted.
So it's a far superior way financially than going with easements. The 2 lots that we were talking about in terms of redirecting them is the ones on the corner over there, there and then down across from it, and then to make them that they're fronting onto the, well, ain't that just how do I work? I just blinded myself with it.
Doesn't work on that
Doesn't
screen.
work on the white screen.
Sorry, I can highlight it with my fingers.
Those 2 lots, we haven't had any interest in, and they are rather small. By the time we put a laneway in, they're going to be even smaller. So we're suggesting merge the 2 and let them front onto this dark street, and we should be able to sell them easier and command a better price for it at that point. The main issue, however, in front of you is again about the drainage. When the area was planned out, it had been addressed, but as construction took place on the individual lots, we see that some changes have been made, and rather than inconveniencing everybody, let's put one plan in place to deal with it going forward.
No other questions? Go ahead.
I have a motion that's moved by Councillor
Oh,
Barker.
sorry, Jim, did you have a question? You had your,
Yeah, I was just curious, can the drainage issues be resolved by addressing it with the development that sort of caused the problem in the first place?
In some ways, but I am stepping, oh boy.
So no, I'm good.
No,
We've looked at this area numerous times over the last 2-3 years to try and come up with a good plan. I would say that the one we have in front of you today is probably the best one so far. We can't direct all the water to the inside road because of the elevation difference between Queen and Porteous. So we have Queen the houses on Porteous are actually draining towards Porteous. The houses on Queen are draining towards are draining towards the back. Yeah, so Queen goes towards those new lots. So in this area here. So Queen is high going down. Porteous is high going down. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna mess you guys all up. Porteous slopes this way. Queen slopes this way. And then in order to get them to come up to the road's high and it has to come down. So on both sides down to drain in the backyards of all of those properties is the way, I'm pretty sure. I'm looking at Dixie because I know he worked on it for a bit as well. I think that's the best way to describe it. We did go through it, and it's been probably looked over to death in terms of trying to figure out what's the most appropriate way to drainage, but the rear was always sort of the plan.
Councillor Mino.
I'm just a little confused here, but the dark blue on your picture, where's the laneway gonna be?
The dark blue on my picture.
Like, behind the 2 houses there?
The drainage easement will go to the back of the property.
Where's
Oh,
the-
sorry, you're looking at here. I'm like, what are you looking at?
Yeah.
Sorry. In the back of those laneways, there'll
And
be the drainage easement.
There's no laneways in the other properties then?
So there's no, not here, these
No,
two
no,
here won't
no,
have any.
Directly across,
These two?
yeah.
There's some in the north.
There's already laneways there?
No, we are creating them
And where are they gonna go? Right behind the house?
right behind the house.
And then what's left of the property after that? What would you say?
I think there's 90, this property here measures about 27 meters. So take 10 feet off of that, you're looking at, well, 3 meters, so 24 meters, which is about, how many feet? Yeah.
So it's still a lot that can be
Well,
sold.
and that's what Wilf was saying, we were thinking because the lot's getting a little bit less deep, we can direct them towards
Make it
Dark
wide.
Street.
Yeah,
So sell 2 lots there and 2 lots up here. Sell these 2 together, but make them front on Dark Street.
and if the present owner wants to lease the lane,
It's used for drainage purposes, so as long as they're not,
they could erect a shed that's
No.
removable?
they
No?
can't erect a shed because it's gonna be right in a drainage easement. They could put a fence around it, and then we would just have to stipulate within that lease agreement that the fence can come down if we need to get back there. So I think we typically have ones where you can move the fence around if we need to get back there. So it's definitely something we could put as an option. The other thing that Wilf mentioned was we can proceed with easements where they actually legally own that piece of property, but there's a 10-foot easement where you can't develop on it for the same purpose, to maintain that
Yeah.
drainage to come through.
And these property owners know that this is gonna happen, or?
Those are still owned by us.
No, but they're the abutting.
There was always part of the plan to have an easement back there,
Okay.
but,
So
and,
it's nothing new then?
no, it probably needs to be reminded.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of that first house, that gentleman there
Yeah, you can see
wants
the,
to,
he's always wanted to purchase it,
Yeah.
and he's, yeah.
so I'm just trying to say, can we accommodate him in that same process by leasing the lane? Because we lease lanes all over town here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if the garage overlaps the 10 feet in his own property,
Well,
he's
we
happy.
can't let him encroach a garage into the property, but
Oh, okay.
that
So-
won't happen, but so I mean, that's 10 feet there, you'd be adding that much.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see the encroachments that have happened with the grade, and a lot of that's just because you don't see grade on the interior of the cul-de-sac as well, because those all have to come up too.
I know people will probably be happy actually at the end of the day, but there's a drainage there.
Yeah. We're legally obligated to ensure that the water doesn't drain on private properties. So it's one of those things where it's not something we truly have a choice in, it has to get done.
So I guess, real quickly, like when we developed this subdivision, we didn't think about drainage?
Yeah,
or did
so
we did?
drainage was considered
it
as part of the plan, I just don't, we didn't have any legal method of controlling it, whereas this is going to put that legal method in place, that's all. It came up when we went to try and sell the 2 properties on the south portion of King George, and we're like, well, drainage, let's make sure we have that plan in place, and then the drainage plan did alter at that point because the elevation differences between the houses on Porteous and the way that Queen Street developed, and
So a motion is moved by Councillor Barker, seconded by Councillor Kiley. The council directs the town planner to proceed with a survey to allow laneways behind some properties along King George Court as presented, and at the estimated cost of $7,000 be drawn from the fiscal services operating budget.
All in favor? Carried. Clean yard bylaws.
did I miss that one?
Yep.
Oh, I did miss it, sorry. Clean yards bylaws. Okay, so this is basically coming forward to council for consideration because the short form wording has been finalized. So just to refresh your memory, that community standards bylaw was passed. It was an extended or expanded version of the clean yards. Intent was to strengthen the language between the clean yards bylaw and the pool fencing, waste collection, and property standards bylaws. So the clean yards bylaws no longer needed to be in effect since that short form ticketing's come into play for the community standards. This is just a bylaw to repeal the clean yards bylaw.
Questions? Okay, that'll come back. Number I, redirection of capital funds for airports resurfacing.
Are you tired of me yet?
You're almost done.
Sorry. Okay, so this one came up, it was sort of, it came up as a, we went down to the airport to check and make sure, on the crack surfacing that, or crack filling that has been completed last year to see how it was holding up. When we originally, put into the budget, we had requested 120,000 to actually physically start cutting out these major cracks and redoing them so that they wouldn't come back and we wouldn't have any future problems with them. When the budget, so during capital, during the process, I was watching the YouTube video, which was extremely handy. We did see that 120 to get pushed over 2 years. So we saw 60 coming from this year, 60 coming from next year. And then we were taking a look at the prices dealing with actually taking and rehabilitating that piece of pavement. We're actually going to be spending the majority of the money just to get equipment brought to the site. So we weren't effectively using a large portion of money to actually fix the runway. So to do that twice over 2 years, you're losing so much money just to get the equipment up there twice. So Dixit and Chris actually went out to the airport both separately and did a good look at the cracks itself from last year, and they actually said it's holding very, very well. So they did the comprehensive review, it surpassed expectations. So what staff are proposing that instead of spending that $60,000 on resurfacing, we focus that attention on the crack filling itself. So we'd actually get a lot done for 60 grand. We typically only have 30 in our capital. So with 60, we'd be able to cover twice the area. The other options that we wanted to put forward for council to consider was to allocate the 30 that we typically receive in capital and do crack filling, and move the 30,000 towards resurfacing next year, which gives us 90 to do more elaborate work next year. Or we could spend the 120 this year and pay it forward over the 2 years through delayed invoicing. I don't like doing that because it basically puts an unnecessary constraint on future budget allocations. I do want to mention that this is coming from gas tax and through the capital budget. That's the only other thing I wanted to mention.
Councillor Barker.
What's the most beneficial method? Like, what are you proposing? And because I know nothing about paving, but I want to make sure that our tax dollars are spent wisely and efficiently.
So the best method would be to spend $1.2 million and just do the whole thing, but that's not going to happen. So I can get maybe Dixit to comment on that because he's reassured me that this is actually a good way to go. If we wanted to go ahead and start taking big chunks out of the ground and doing that, we would need a lot more money to make it worthwhile. Dixit, do you have comments on that?
Yeah, so on that aspect, you said what is the best way to deal with this particular project, and basically looking at the crack filling, like we are way beyond the expectation of the runway kind of thing, right? When you're looking at the crack way, we have like, the big concern was the bigger cracks, but we're looking at the bigger cracks, we have like, we compared that, we have like 90% of the smaller cracks, which is gonna get bigger and bigger every year past, that we have more waters get into it. And from last 3 years, we are expecting projectings to do just to crack filling, just to cover those small cracks, so we can at least prevent them getting bigger. Like that's the only option we have with available money we have on the source. And at the meantime, like we said, okay, we have those bigger cracks, but technically looking at those, to deal with those bigger cracks, there is all extra cost involved in it, because there is a different techniques we do to cover those costs, right? So moving along this from last 3 years, last 2 years, whatever we did with effectively last year, when I applied it, I said, let's see if we are doing the smaller cracks, let's apply the same technique with the bigger cracks, with spending some more times, like take more efforts to clean them, put more extra material, but just to make sure. And now last year what we did, we tried a different aspect to like throwing the cements on it, like just to make sure it won't lose its integrity, because all the time it happened when we have the bigger cracks. And the sealant material is more flexible. So once you have something moving about, a little bit of movement, and that material just pull out like a rope, right? So last year, that's why we applied the cement to see it measure its integrity while the top surface getting more stiffer, right? And that's worked really well this year when we check out what happened during the winter months, because we don't know what the outcome's gonna be. And that's why when I reviewed the assessment and I sent down Ashley, I totally forget to bring up those pictures. I just recently sent her because I was really a little bit, my apologies, because otherwise, yeah, so otherwise, like you have wanted the picture to see, basically. So that's why I strongly suggest her that basically just going with, because every year we had about like $15,000, especially for the airport from last 3 years to spend on the crack filling. So might as well we put that extra money, so might as well we can able to cover up like 4 years area right now, what money we have, which is gonna be more effective, and as a cost saving measure, we're gonna resolve the problem. So that's why I strongly suggest that we can continue the crack filling, and also those big cracks, we're gonna tackle it down whatever we did from the last year, because it looks it's effective and is also cost saving, and it's due to serve the purpose.
So you're basically getting more bang for your buck on what you already have allocated in the budget. Now, to be fair, when I walked through the door, Jen stopped me, and her concern was relating, I think, to asset management planning. And we did not have a chance to discuss that. I just want to be fair to her. How does this impact? And will we be able to manage?
Whether what we're doing is actually betterment and repairs. We need to determine whether it's a betterment or repair, because if it's a betterment, yes, it'll fall under gas tax, under our TCA policy, but if it just falls under repair, then it's not operational, and it's not eligible for gas tax.
Okay, from my perspective, that it is bettering it insofar as as Dix had said, you were taking a number of those small cracks and you're actually eliminating them. So it's bettering the runway. Yes, there is an element of repair insofar as that's inevitable, but the main gist is to take it further than we can. That's going to be hanging on me, not Ben.
But I just want, like Janice, you say, like she says, it's a repair. So like when we are looking at the process, that money actually allocated for it for $60,000 is also a repair. It's not like is kind of a repair, but it's different, which is for the bigger cracks. But still, if you are going this money was allocated to do resurfacing. I just want to correct Ashley. It is just a repair. Resurfacing is about like 37,000 square meter of the runway, and you're looking at the cost, because the same technique we did on the government road job, which is just a resurfacing. You're looking at about $27 to $31 per square meters, which put you at least $1 million just to replace the whole resurfacing, which is the minimum, which is gonna be more like like the construction kind of job is not gonna fall under repair.
So we're making it better?
So just that's only things I had to brought that up.
Thank you so much.
Councillor Morgan.
How much of the airport are we going to get done for the 60,000 roughly?
Okay, so this year basically like those crack filling job basically based on the linear meter pricing of the crack filling itself, and plus the material, because last year at our department we got some good pricing on the material. That's why we held it 2 years, the material itself, which is cost us about about $47 per linear meters, not including material, just the labor and the materials like the equipment and everything, the companies bring it down. This year I got a couple of contractors quote me in, but like this year we have priced about like,
Answer the question.
Pardon?
Answer the question, how much you're gonna get done?
How much you gonna get done?
Lots.
Yeah, lot. Like for $60,000, like if you're gonna spend $60,000 just towards the airport to the crack filling, we're gonna cover about 40% of the airport,
Perfect.
of the runway. And
See
next,
him before he's had his tea.
So I have a motion that's moved by Councillor Kiley and seconded by Councillor Barker. The council authorizes the request to transfer $60,000 assigned in the capital budget for large-scale airport runway resurfacing to airport crack filling.
All in favor? Thank you. Item J.
Last one. Sorry. Okay, so this is mostly just to bring to your attention. Typically with these requests, we do them in-house and just give them our guidelines to mineral activity in Kirkland Lake, and it's a document that basically identifies that we expect them to bring the property back up to standard, and so on and so forth. In this case, these two claims are actually on our ski trails and our snowshoe trails. We've had discussions with this gentleman since the day I walked in the door 7 years ago. we've been in discussions, so this situation is a little different. It's unpatented land that someone holds a mineral lease on. So there's no surface rights, mineral rights. It's just a lease that they keep on re-entering into over 20-year periods of time. And he continuously does work. So I think you have seen this request come before council before, about 3 years ago. This is a 3-year term for renewal for exploration purposes. So we have been in communication with the ministry and whether or not we could look at patenting the land so we can go ahead and subdivide the mineral rights versus the surface rights so that we can get ownership of the surface rights or lease the surface rights for the purpose of doing our trails. It's not possible. I haven't been able to make any progress with them in terms of proceeding that way, even when that 20-year time frame came up, and I think it was in 2014. We tried to fight for it at that point to cancel the lease and get a proper process, a lease on mineral versus surface rights so that we can keep ownership. They weren't willing to proceed because there's a clause within that lease that says that they have the rights to continue the lease for eternity if they want to. So legally, the legal implications related to it were that it's his basically until he decides he doesn't want to do it anymore. So it has been passed down through different individuals as well. So I just wanted to kind of keep you posted that there are going to be some proposed drilling sites located in that area, in the trail system, close to nearby residential dwellings that are there. So it's mostly just this is what they're doing, and we are aware of it, and we were aware that's happening. We have very good. We're on pretty good terms with the individual that's doing this, so they're definitely understanding that we don't want to see the trails be damaged in any way, and they've been very respectful. I don't think we've had any issues so far. So again, it's just mostly for your information.
Okay, thank you. Okay, wow, you're done. Thank you very much. We have the introduction and readings of the bylaw, item 7.
The first one, I'd just like to just preamble to you. At last meeting, we did pass a bylaw for the retaining wall at the former sewage treatment plant, and we did give you a price of $110,000. That's the total cost of the project. That's not the cost of Pedersen and their contract. So we'd like to bring you back this bylaw that actually reflects the tender price and not the contract price. So it's moved by Councillor Barker, seconded by Councillor Kiley, that bylaw 17-059, being a bylaw to authorize mayor and clerk to execute an agreement with Pedersen Construction to construct a retaining wall at the former sewage treatment plant, repealing bylaw 17-058, be read a first, second, and third time, and acted and passed.
All in favor? Carried.
It's moved by Councillor Kiley, seconded by Councillor Barker, that bylaw 17-060, being a bylaw to deem 32 and 34 Dixon Avenue as part of a plan not to be registered, be read a first, second, and third time, enacted and passed.
All in favor? Carried.
It's moved by Councillor Barker, seconded by Councillor Kiley, that bylaw 17-061, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 15-017, regulating traffic and parking, with the addition of a stop sign at Tweedsbury and Goodfish intersection, be read a first, second, and third time, enacted and passed.
All in favor? Okay, that's carried.
It's moved by Councillor Kiley, seconded by Councillor Barker, that bylaw 17-062, being a bylaw to authorize mayor and clerk to execute an agreement for funding with automotive materials stewardship, be read a first, second, and third time, enacted and passed.
All in favor? Carried.
It's moved by Councillor Barker, seconded by Councillor Kiley, that bylaw 17-063, being a bylaw to authorize mayor and clerk to execute an agreement with Bragg Communications, or Eastlink, for installation of communications equipment on Eastlink's tower, be read a first, second, and third time, enacted and passed.
All in favor? Okay, that's carried.
It's moved by Councillor Kiley, seconded by Councillor Barker, that bylaw 17-064, being a bylaw to repeal bylaw 10-054, the Clean Yards bylaw, be read a first, second, and third time, enacted and passed.
All in favor? That's carried. Notices of motion. None. Confirmation bylaw,
It's moved by Councillor Barker, seconded by Councillor Kiley, that bylaw 17-065, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held June 6, 2017, be read a first, second, and third time, enacted and passed.
All in favor? Carried. Councilors' reports. Okay, back in May the 25th, I attended the Northern College graduation again this year, and there was a considerable number of students graduating. It was very well attended. On June the 2nd, I attended the Victim Services Volunteer Appreciation Night in New Liskeard, and it was very well attended as well. On June the 3rd, we had the Rainbow Run here behind the complex. That was sort of a joint partnership between the town, sort of facilitated by Kim Clockers, and the high school athletic association. And I think Tanya was the representative of the high school. They had initially, I think, 79 registered. And the day of the run, there was, I would say, it looked like over 300. So it was very well, attended, and the first of maybe a number of annual runs. Last thing is, on Thursday, Dixit and I are visiting Federal Public School. They've asked us down. They're doing a course on why the roads are like they are in Kirkland Lake. And Dixit and I will be going down there for an hour, and we're looking forward to it, and the school's certainly looking forward to it. And, you know, we've always encouraged the schools to get involved, and the federal is getting involved this week, so we're looking forward to that. That pretty well ends that. So we have adjournment.
It's moved by Councillor Kiley, seconded by Councillor Barker, that council adjourn its regular meeting of June 6, 2017 to an in-camera meeting to discuss one property issue and two personnel issues concerning an identifiable person or persons.
All in favor? Approved. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much. Do some signing, or you want to save me from doing them in the morning? Okay. I'll do those down there because who's Jimmy?